How is everybody?
Yeah, that's what I said. How is everybody? And I went, wait a minute. I said,
You're
How
saying how are everybody's?
no, that doesn't sound right.
Well, welcome everyone. This is the January 13th, 2025 meeting of the Scio Township Planning Commission. And I guess, why don't we go ahead and do roll call? And then since we have new commissioners, I think it would be most appropriate if you just sort of did a quick little introduction of yourselves for our public here and the public online. Go ahead with roll call. Mhm.
Brandt,
Here.
Walsh, here, Hyde,
Here.
Fletcher,
Present.
Hindle,
Here.
Culbertson,
Here.
And Moore is not yet here.
Okay, great. So I want to welcome Commissioner Hindle and Commissioner Fletcher. And I'd love you to just give a little intro for folks.
My family's lived at the same farm for almost 50 years, so we've been around for a long time, and hopefully I can be of use on this commission.
Great,
Welcome.
yeah, welcome.
Moved to Scio Township in 1993 and have enjoyed developing and doing other building projects and happy to be on the commission as well.
Great, good. Well, next we'll move the adoption of the agenda. And I do think one of the things I wanted to bring up is, you know, we can do it under chair report, or we can just add it to the agenda. We should elect our chair, vice chair, and secretary. I thought I had it on there.
Elected officers, it's under 8.
New business.
Four.
Oh, I gotcha. C4, it's under new business. Okay, I was looking at it under the other things. Okay, great. Then we're good. Then,
I'll move to adopt the agenda as is. Support.
okay, moved by Commissioner Walsh, supported by Commissioner Hyde to adopt the agenda as it is posted. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, move forward with the agenda as posted. Welcome, Commissioner Rohr.
Hello.
Yay. And it is 7:02. We are good.
Samurai sword.
Next are communications and correspondence, and we did receive several correspondence that are in the packet. And I just want to let people know that there was a little bit of social violence. Kathleen, I didn't look recently. Did that get moved to correspondence, or is it still under social violence? Okay, so everything, all the correspondence that we've received is under correspondence. We have no presentations, so we're going to move to public comment. And I just want to, we don't have any public hearings tonight, so we have a public comment now and then later at close to the end of the meeting. So, and so if people wishing to address the Planning Commission on matters that are not on a public hearing, which we don't have this evening, are welcome to come forward. There is a public comment sign-in sheet, if you would sign in, please. And we'll start with those who are present, and then we'll move to those who are online. And we just ask that you just try and limit your comments to 3 minutes, unless you're representing a group, and then it's 5 minutes. And we're glad to welcome you. And you're welcome to sign in before or after you speak. That either way, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to let people know that either is an option. Yeah.
All right, good evening, board members and community members. Hopefully, it's now been a few years since discussion began regarding Social Vines. And I hope that the new board members have had time to not only review all of Social Vines' previous and present documents, but also the concerns of the surrounding neighbors. There are several concerns that the neighboring homes have, first being the capacity limit. Currently, under the conditional land use, the current capacity indoor and outdoor is limited to 85 guests, which is much higher than when discussions first began with the conditional use. There are several mentions of the fire department hosting and determining the maximum capacity for the event barn. If the fire department states that the maximum capacity is 150 people, is that the number that's going to be posted? Who will be monitoring and enforcing these maximum capacities? The newly constructed pavilion is currently being used as a farm stand. If approved, how will it be monitored that the pavilion is not used as an overflow area? In the barn plan drawings, the loft is stated to be an overflow seating area. Again, bringing back to the topic, what is the maximum capacity going to be? As noted in the Carlisle-Wortman document, a request to increase parking spaces from 35 to 44 is also being made. If we're going to be an 85-person capacity, then only 22 parking spaces are required. The conditional land use also has these parking spaces as grass, but the site plan now states that the parking spaces will be gravel and concrete. Why the upgrade to concrete? If this is a seasonal operation, as outlined in the conditional use, then only grass is required. The Carlisle-Wortman document also states that no bus transportation is proposed, but also states that the fire marshal will determine the adequacy of proposed large vehicle circulation. The difference between large vehicle and bus needs to be defined, such as what category does a limousine or party bus fall under. In the conditional use, music is to only be played indoors. The distinction between indoor and outdoor areas needs to be made, such as are the covered porches being considered indoor or outdoor? If these are determined to be indoor, this could have serious noise impacts to the neighbors. I have not seen any documents from the Washtenaw County Roads, and I believe that they should review these site plans and make recommendations before proceeding. The impacts to traffic flow and safety need to be reviewed. During 4th of July fireworks, cars could be seen parked on both sides of Morrison Drive and a line of traffic down Dexter and Arbor Road. I had to turn several individuals away, as individuals were attempting to block and park in my driveway and even asking if they can view the fireworks from my yard. In their proposal, I do not see recommendations for crowd control or overflow parking, which is something that needs to be taken into consideration given the history of event at this location. I believe that it is clear that the applicant plans for social vines is much larger than currently being presented. Max capacity is set to 85, but the additional parking spaces, additions to the barn, and large drain field and concrete parking lot show that the plan is potentially operate year-round, expanding max capacity, hosting events. I know the surrounding neighbors appreciate your thoughtful consideration into all these matters. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present who would like to address the planning commission? Welcome. You already signed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Streeter. I live at 6793 Dexter and Arbor Road, which is just a little bit west of the Heron's farm. And I did want to address, I hope some of the points that were just touched on are elaborated on in Daryl DePestle's communication with you. And I was hopeful that all of you have read that, because much of it, of what she said is in there. My concern also does have to do still with enforcement. He makes a real issue of enforcement. Who is going to enforce this? I mean, all these stipulations were made in good faith, and I believe the Herons made them in good faith. But just as was elaborated on, obviously, this has changed a bit. And I think that this should be noted and that it should be clarified, and those enforcements need to be stated and communicated to all of the people in the surrounding area. Because I know, I mean, here we are, yes, 4th of July is a different event, but none of the neighbors that I know of were personally contacted by the Herons as to the fact that they had been permitted to make this a public event in the Sun Times. It was under the list of all the places you could go to in the surrounding areas in Washtenaw County to see fireworks. I live between two private roads. Both of them were cars parked on both sides of the roads, bumper to bumper, all the way down, across Dexter and Arbor, and that, across from Forshey Lane, in that private road. It was a debacle. I called the sheriff's department that night. The next morning, I called them back. I called the fire department, and I finally talked to Jessica here, who had given them permission to make it a public event. This was so disorganized. There were children in wagons. I mean, I know this doesn't go with the party barn, I'm sorry, the wine tasting necessarily. But this is just an example. If things are not very clarified here about how the traffic is to flow, how many people are in attendance, if now they're making a porch, if that includes, because it's covered, outdoor entertaining with doors open and music playing, I mean, okay, I'm done, but you can see my concern. I think the traffic flow is a real issue. People were parking on my grass. I had to go out and shoo them away and say, this is private property. This is not a park, people.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Neighborhood. Is there anyone else in Township Hall?
My name's Lisa Callis, and we are relatively new to Scio Township. We live in Bridgewood Hills, moved in like 6 months ago or so. And so this is all new to us, but what we've read of Dale's concerns, we're concerned because basically our backyard almost backs up to the vineyard. So we're concerned about the noise. I know in some of the articles we've read, they say the windows are gonna be shut with music on to the barns, but then there was one saying the windows were gonna be open. So if the windows are open with music, you know, are we gonna be able to hear that from our backyard? And that's a main concern. And obviously the traffic, 4th of July seemed to be a nightmare. Couldn't leave, couldn't get out, couldn't come home. If this is something that's gonna be approved, would the road commission possibly consider like a decel lane to enter the vineyard to help with traffic flow? So that, you know, it's like a 50-mile-an-hour per hour road, so if there's not a decel lane, everyone's gonna be stopping. And currently, it's a nightmare to get out of Morrison Drive, and with all this additional traffic, and the events possibly happening 2 times a week, I think it's gonna be very difficult and dangerous for not only our community, but the people visiting the vineyard. So that's my thoughts on it.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move online. Rob Pattinson. Hi, Rob.
Hi, everyone. Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. The public comments so far remind me that Scio Township, after 3 years of trying, still doesn't have a noise ordinance. Now that we have a new board and we have a new planning commission, perhaps the planning commission can help encourage the board to start working on that noise ordinance. And what we need is a noise ordinance with teeth, one that will force uncooperative party barn owners into compliance. And we need a noise ordinance code enforcement officer that is willing to do the job, unlike the previous one that ignored the noise ordinances and left it to the sheriff, who ignored it altogether. So we need some ordinance help for the planning commission, and we need it from the board. I hope that you will encourage them to get this started And thank you to the people who spoke. Scio Township has a terrible history with party barns, and I'm glad that the issue is still being thought of and addressed by concerned residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff. Jeff, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, Commissioners. Jeff Kittendorf, 2287 Hillside Court, located in the Bridgewood Hills subdivision. I know my neighbor Daryl DePesto has sent you a letter. It's in the packet. I would just like to co-sign on that letter. He brings up very good points that I hope you all consider when thinking through this proposal. All the speakers tonight in the public comment have raised concerns that I am concerned with, specifically noise and increased traffic. But really, the underlying part is how will it be regulated and how will it be enforced? These rules and stipulations in the conditional use. So I think until you have a good understanding of how these issues will be enforced, you might want to think about whether or not it's the right move. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Moore, supported by,
Or,
I did get Commissioner Hyde.
okay,
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public comment is closed at 7:16. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. Those are the 12/2/24 minutes.
Well, there might be discussion, but I'll move this to approve minutes as written.
Okay. Moved by
I'll support.
Commissioner Walsh, or I mean, Commissioner Hyde, and supported by Commissioner Walsh to approve the minutes as submitted. Yeah, any discussion on any proposed revisions? All right, then, let's see, I'm gonna do a roll call vote only because I'm gonna abstain from, approving the minutes because I was abstaining from the meeting, so, or the bulk of the meeting.
Are you allowed to do
I
that?
think you actually can vote on the minutes.
I think I can, but
think
I'm
you're
just gonna.
Wired,
yeah.
actually.
I'm fired.
Oh, okay.
I don't
didn't
know.
read that.
But anyway, and those
Roll.
that, yeah, I, whatever, but I'd like to do a roll call for the minutes.
okay, Walsh, yes, Hyde,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Brand,
Yes.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Kindle,
Yes.
Culbertson.
Abstained. All right, the minutes are approved as posted. We have no public hearings and no unfinished business this evening, so we're going to move to possible action SP number 24014, Social Vines, Heron Farms wine tasting. And so the project representatives will come forward. And typically what we do is we hear from the applicant. We then go to our planning consultant, engineering consultant, and then have questions and discussion on the planning commission. So welcome.
Thank you. We have some slides. If we're able to be a co-presenter on Zoom, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
share.
you just need to, we just need to, yeah,
Raise my hand.
yeah, raise your hand and then
Okay.
Angela can promote you. And we do have a new planning commission since you were here with the, yeah, so you might want to introduce yourselves and your consultant.
It's 30 seconds.
Yep.
Second.
Voting about.
Yeah, it doesn't, in the
But
bylaws, I looked.
in the trustees, I thought it.
Oh. Yeah, and it doesn't say anything. I don't think it's.
Go ahead, sorry.
Hi, I'm Brian Heron. Scio Township resident at 6620 Dexter Ann Arbor Road. My wife Lori Heron.
Scott Betzel.
Scott Betzel,
Midwestern Consulting.
Western Consulting, and
Betzel, BETZOLDT.
so we knew that there would be a new planning commission tonight, and this is actually our 6th year on this journey to get approval. So because of the new commission, we prepared a presentation, and I usually joke about presentations like I only have 100 slides. We actually have 94. We will go fast though, and really kind of limit the amount of time we talk on each slide. We did send the slides through as well. I apologize it didn't come till tonight because we've been working on them, but we'd like to give you a background on us, on our farm, on the vineyard project to date, on our engagement with the neighbors through this process, and then step into the current plan that's in front of you, if that's okay. But we'll try to be fast. Feel free to stop us if you have any questions. And like I said, I apologize that it's a lot of slides, but there really is a lot that has happened here. We'll just get going. So we're gonna, I think.
You're not planning on doing all 100 slides, are you?
Very quickly.
Most you? All 100?
Well, unfortunately, you were a part of the, I think we can do this in 20 minutes.
Especially if we don't interrupt.
So, we'll skip over the summary. So just a bit of, you want to give like a 1 minute about you?
I'm Lori. I'm pretty much the face of Social Vines. And I have 2 acres of grapes right now. They are all cold hardy. We planted in May of 2022. And we did a small harvest 2 years ago. This year, we had another harvest. It's each year the plants, if you are into farm, fruit plants take a little while to, get up. But we're there. We're I'm gonna have probably, if all goes well this winter, I'll have a nice harvest coming up. And we bottled wine. I know it's a government building, so it's just for presentation. But I wanted you to see that we started bottling this past year. I'll be bottling reds soon. The goal is to be small, small in terms of, we're not youngins anymore. Our kids are, practically graduated from high school. So, the events will be, I don't want huge events. I'm just saying that for the record. He will be the face of the building part, so you're gonna hear a lot more from Brian. But if you have specific questions for me regarding the winery and stuff, I'm happy to talk about it, but that's in a nutshell, where we're at to date, in the process. We're waiting on MLCC, Michigan Liquor Control. We're close to being able to sell the wine. So, but we're really in production, and I'm concentrating on the vineyard. I'm the viticulturist first, the winemaker second. I do have consultants, but I am making the wine. I have a big production space now, so we're slowly ramping up, and we prefer to be not in distribution. We'd prefer to be direct to consumer because I am so small. I'd like to keep it that way, and because I'm a farmer now. I was an occupational therapist for 26 years, and I've been a farmer for the last 5. So.
That's Lori. I'm Brian. I can't keep plants alive, but I fix machines for her. My day job, I run a company called Opus, where the old Thomson Reuters headquarters was. We're there, so we've been fortunate to grow. We have several hundred employees in Scio Township now, about 5 minutes from here in software and technology. But I'm here to really support Lori. This is her business. We live on the 69-acre farm together, and she wanted to make a winery. So here we go. Up here is just a map so you can see where we are. So this is Main Street on Dexter and Dexter Pub. We're right here. You can see Huron Farms is up here. Bridgewood Hills is right here. The Huron River is behind us with the train tracks, and then we're right on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, of course, where we are today, township. And then just one more view. This is the property line, so you can see, I guess I should have stayed up there. This is so you can see the neighbors around us. This is Huron Farms, which we have, I think we said 7 or 8. 6 neighbors on Huron Farms touching our property line, but hundreds up in here. And then we've got 4 directly adjacent properties here, and then Bridgewood Hills, and then a couple houses over here. And a lot of the neighborhood interaction has been with Bridgewood Hills. We have interacted with Huron Farms, and they don't seem very engaged either way. Like, hey, it'll be great if you have it, but I don't think we had more than 1 or 2 public comments from Huron Farms in 6 years, and they were positive. But nonetheless, we've been working with the neighbors, but that's kind of where the plots are. To just give you a view, we really love one thing about this farm before I flip on is, we like the farm in the city. And the back of our property line is on the Dexter city line. So we have a lot of the amenities of a farm, and most of the quietness other than the loud road. But the Bushes is 3 minutes away, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. Just quickly, the site background, we're really kind of geeked about the property. It was deeded in 1835. It's a historic gravel pit, so we have 100 feet of rolling hills. Anyone who grew up in Dexter as a kid probably rode dirt bikes back there many years ago. So it's a really beautiful property. It's just like hilly. You just don't find that around here. And the Ernst family owned it for 50 years, and we got it 10 years ago. So that's kind of the title history. We bid against 4 subdivision developers in 2015 when we got the property, Norfolk Homes and a number of others who wanted to develop it. We wanted to keep it the way it was. We got a few pictures for you, just, like I said, the gravel pit and the rolling hills, and we have 2 miles of trails through the forest. We have a couple of lakes on the property. You can find any kind of wildlife pretty much in our driveway, from turkeys to coyotes to you name it, right?
The deer like to put their babies on the vineyard.
Yeah. We can't make a deer fence tall enough. Just briefly, this is the Scio Township Master Plan language. This is straight out of the master plan. And it talks about the Mill Creek sub area, which we're positioned in. And talks about a variety of land uses, but a goal of preserved open space, natural features and farmland, and really maintaining a green belt between the village and the rural areas. Just a very quick bit about our home. So we live in a house that we rebuilt that's over 100 years old. The first 2 photos of the condition when we moved in and been vacant for 10 years. And we basically just rebuilt the house, same outer walls, live there with our 5 kids. It's been an adventure.
And I have to say, we remodeled, like Brian did most of the work, and I helped him. I moved in with him with the kids.
Yeah, Lori was framing in the basement. Permitted, of course. On the property line, we put the berm in. So as you drive to Bushes, we're very recognizable by a red barn and a berm. That red barn will be our tasting room in the future if we get through this process. And the berm we installed for sound control. It's over 1,000 feet long and over 20 feet high. And we've heard from a lot of neighbors, especially in Huron Farms, that significantly changed their ambient noise levels just because Dexter Ann Arbor is so loud. We are actually the closest house to Dexter Ann Arbor Road, I think, on Dexter Ann Arbor. We're 20 feet from the right of way. Unfortunately, the berm doesn't really go in front of our house that well because our front door is right up on the edge. We also added some lakes and cleaned them out. So I want to talk about 4th of July because I think this is key to the feedback you've been receiving. We started this tradition 9 years ago, and it has to do with my childhood and my love of fireworks, but I don't make them or shoot them, but Ryan Nixon does, and him and I became friends. So 9 years ago, we approached Scio under Spalding and requested a permit for a professional fireworks display. And we got it, and so we did the first year of fireworks, and there were a lot of questions about would people be scared? Would it be too loud? And we took it easy and we took it slow together. And every year we worked with the neighbors and with the township through this process. And I'll talk a little bit about the process. And so like the process is essentially we go to the township with the plan, the trustee board, we prepare our neighbors if it's approved. The trustee board had asked us to invite all the neighbors in the past and to make the community aware. So we use things like Friends of Dexter on Facebook. And for 8 of the 9 years, I would call it a high level of success within the community and very little feedback at all on the negative side and extremely positive feedback. Fire department is there, staff on site, and we had at times over 1,000 people prior to last year and never a traffic issue. This is a list of the neighbors we notified last year. So 65 letters we mailed out to everybody adjacent, letting them know this is the time of the show. This is, you know, basically the details of what's coming. We used to drive around in our ATV, but we actually mail the letters now because it's just kind of busy the day of or the day before. So we do notify the neighbors of the event. That's something we worked out with the trustee board. So what happened? 2024 didn't really go very well. And the day of the show, she got a phone call from her girlfriend and she's like, oh my God, Fox 2 News Detroit has listed all the places you can see fireworks and you're on the list. They didn't ask us, we had no idea. From that point until pretty much 2 in the morning, the night we finished the show, our phone would stop ringing, people trying to figure out where are the fireworks, how do I get there, how do I get in?
People were showing up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Saying, is this where the fireworks are?
So at 8:30 at night, when we're typically like 100 cars in, we had to close the gates. We had 3,000 people on the farm. And it wasn't just the 3,000 people that caused the traffic. It was the next 2 hours of additional people trying to get in. It was unfortunate. We had no idea that was going to happen. We did our best in advance to notice everybody of the fireworks, but I mean, had we known that this was going to happen, we would have done something to stop it. The impact was at least 4 hours for the community in terms of the roadway. We saw people parking on the roadway. We saw people parking in bushes and walking back down. I mean, it was a mess. It is like, I'm not going to sit here and say like it went great. In fact, like if I knew we were going to do that again, we just wouldn't do fireworks. And I don't think the trustee board would approve us for fireworks either. I don't think anybody would want to do it. So we met with the township already and we started a plan for 2025. If we haven't been approved for 2025, we haven't even submitted. I mean, we can still decide not to do it again or whatever the case may be, but we met with them and said, look, if we do it again, how do we work together and how do we make this not a problem? And so the sort of high level items we carved out, the existing actions we do with neighborhood notifications would continue, but we need to stop the public awareness. And I heard Dexter Sun-Times mention they've actually run the article for 4 years and it was never a concern because their user base isn't that big. It just, isn't. It was the fact that we had people driving an hour and a half from Detroit to come out. But in any case, we'll figure out how to reduce the amount of public information that's out there while still satisfying the trustee board's goal of having the immediate neighbors notified. For the first time last year, we didn't have traffic guards because it has gone so well, and then that happened. So we go back to hiring off-duty police officers. We would actually place people at Bushes and Country Market to stop the walking. I think the walking was the biggest concern for most of us because people walk down the road.
That was a safety issue.
It's just not a road you walk down. Like I won't let my 16-year-old walk down the road, go to Bushes because it's very hilly. There's no place on the side to walk on.
I don't like going and getting the mail at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That tells you.
And overall, it was a bummer because we do the fireworks in large part for the community. It's not a small ordeal. And I think a lot of people still enjoyed it, but a lot of our immediate neighbors didn't because of the traffic situation. So we can't have that continue. I think it's important we talk about this, even though this is social vines, for a few reasons. One is this was a huge event. 3,000 people showed up. The fireworks in the past had demonstrated that we were able to operate with even 1,000 people on the property without a traffic issue. And the scale that we're asking for is 85. And the size of parking and capability for cars, you know, I have a photo from the sky of what we did with the 3,000 people. It was not enjoyable. I mean, to be honest. So that, I think let's move on if that's okay, and maybe we can take questions at the end, because we'll probably touch on a few more points. So, we went to the fast version of this, just talk about the Michigan wine industry.
It's booming, you know, we're starting to get bigger. I mean, I've been in the industry for a while and I go to a lot of conferences, so I'm meeting a lot of people high up in the industry now. So, I mean, you can read the statistics, but our region's kind of an untouched area. There's very, well, in the next slide, you see there's very few vineyards that are close to us. So, and we would be the first one in Scio Township. These are just some, to name a few. I have actually mentored at all of them or done some work with them to prepare. But that's pretty much.
Yeah.
But
The
yeah.
point is, Michigan has a wine industry.
We do.
People don't think of Michigan wine as they go up north. So just kind of moving quickly, you know, to be sustainable, we would be the only winery in the community. And a key element, because we're low volume, is that we can't sell at a discount. When you sell wine to Trader Joe's or a restaurant, you're taking sometimes a 70% discount. We're not making that many bottles. We can't make that many bottles. So the only viable way to have a winery is to sell a wine on site. A little bit about our farm. On the right, you can see some of the fields where we had hay and wheat in 2019. The middle patch is where the vineyard is right now. So in 2019, we met with this was probably 2 planning commissions ago, we met with them, and they said, and we heard this echoed for the next 2 years, is we said, can you give us approval and then we'll go plant the grapes and put the winery in. We're concerned about making the risk of the investment without the assurance that we can have a tasting room and be viable. And they ultimately said, no, you're gonna have to go ahead and plant the grapes first before we approve use. And we decided to do it. So that's the path we went down. Social Vines began at that point, which you'll note the permit holder is Heron Farms. It owns the farmland. Social Vines is the winery business. It's just a legal liability issue when you run a business on real estate, how it's separated. The goal of Social Vines is really just to bring people together on agriculture and let them enjoy the wine that's made there. Kind of covered that. How we'll promote the wines is really with on-site samplings, wine clubs, tastings, advertising, wine-related events. And the wine-related events is really why we're here, because Right to Farm does enable some amount of on-site sales, but it doesn't really cover the events. And that's why we're seeking the agritourism permit. So here's some photos just of 2020, the prep, you know, getting the trellis systems in. It's a high wire trellis, underground irrigation. We did this without any significant brush clearing or tree removal. We just pretty much took the field we had and planted it. Well, we got really good on skid steers and tractors and everything else.
I'm organically doing, my soil is organic management and I'm sustainable in the community. So I'm on a lot of websites. People know if I'm spraying. But I'm doing a lot of organic. I'm moving towards organic regenerative farming for those interested.
2021 was planting. 2022 was the first harvest, as you mentioned. 2023, maybe the video will play. this is just a drone video of
We did
the
this
harvest that year. So you can kind of see the vines. It's a 3-minute video, we won't play the thing, but. The winemaking done inside of our pole barn behind our house. So this is just some photos of forward making wine. 2023 is our first vintage, so we have some whites ready to sell. Yeah, we can't open them in here unless you approve us. It does out on the parking lot. And then we have some reds that are still on the barrel. So essentially where we are in the wine making business is we now have wine that's ready to sell. We're 6 years in and we're progressing forward. Due to the timeline of this permit, initially we wanted to just sell wine through the tasting agritourism room, and it's not happening fast enough. And that's sort of nobody's fault. It's a complicated thing. It's never been done in Scio. Even the permitting process for us, we have a gas line that runs through, and we've had to have soil engineers tell us where to put retention ponds and all this crazy stuff. So we know we're just not getting there fast enough. And because of that, I'll talk about the pavilion next. We did put a pavilion in. And this is a photo of it. We built this for a few reasons. One was for the 4th of July party we have. One was for personal use for our family, and one was to be a farm stand, which is allowed underneath the right to farm and the GAMPs to be able to put up a farm stand without any kind of conditional use in our agricultural zone. It's not a huge endeavor. We built it in 11 days out of a kit from Menards, but it provided cover for us. And our plan is in spring of 25 to start selling the stuff under the right to farm, which again, isn't really regulated through a special use permit, but neighbors have asked, what's the deal with the pavilion? It's a farm stand. It's not an event center. The zoning we got from Scio Township specifically says on there, this is not to be used with your conditional use permit. So any of everything around the conditional use permit is not related to the pavilion. The pavilion is related to any rights that we have as farmers to have a farm stand. And I think it needs to be pretty clear that they're not the same. Because our intention is not to have it be an overflow for events. It's to sell wine. So this is our timeline with our neighbors in Scio. 2019 is when we began. We had 6 subcommittee meetings with neighbors, 10 planning commission meetings, and 32 meetings in total with township experts, excluding all of our internal stuff. So we've definitely been very engaged. Our original ask, I heard it and I saw it, and Daryl's note, he said they increased the occupancy to 85 through the process. And I talked to Daryl on Saturday, we invited him out. And we actually started at 150, and Jan probably remembers this. And the plan we talked about, and it's reflected in the language of the conditional use permit that was approved, is that we would have the right to come back later and request changes if our neighbors were represented, if the township agreed, and we went through a process that was well defined. So I think.
I want to interrupt you for a second. You recall the discussion was pretty clearly made that we make no promises about any expansion.
Yeah, we understand there's no promise of expansion, but it's important to us that the conditional use gives us a mechanism to ask for
absolutely.
expansion. And the other element, when you look at the plans, like we did engineer the septic field for 200 people because we would like to reach 200. And if we engineer the field for 85 people and in 3 years, everything is going great and we want to get to 200, we may not have a path to get there. Because you know how these things go with engineering. By the time we come back, the codes could change. We might not have a perk. So we specifically took some of the high items like the septic field and said, all right, we just need to engineer for 200. And we want to be transparent with you. Our goal is to get to 200, but only if we prove to our neighbors that it's not an issue. We'll start at 85. We might forever be at 85. And the conditional use actually has all these mechanisms. If they hear sound, we lose our sound permit. You know, if there's 2 times in a year, we could lose the whole agricultural permit. So there are definitely mechanisms around it, but we just want to be honest about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to get to. And the scale of it, 200 people, is the occupancy of this room. So that's the maximum that our septic field and that we would ever want to get to on that site. But we're fine with 85 for now. It's our burden to show that we can do better. We asked for higher operating hours. We asked for music inside, which we were fine with, and we asked for no restrictions on event types. This was the original ask. And then I'm going to show you sort of the process we went through. Sound was a concern, so we hired a sound engineer, and we actually had a planning meeting on the property with the sound engineer, if you remember that. We played loud music, we pointed it at the neighbor's house, we all walked down there, and we measured sound. And I think one of the things we found is it wasn't really super noticeable, which made us happy, but also the 65 decibel township code is just totally wrong. And it's, I agree with the neighbors, like, I can't believe it's still 65 decibels because that's pretty loud. So we established through this process a new sound standard that only applies to us, which is inaudible. And we have to have a recording device 24/7 to prove that there is no sound that's been measured at the property line. We did do traffic studies, we did fire studies. We met with the neighbors many, many times. We've invited them on site many times. In fact, we sent them a letter last week letting them know about this meeting and invited them out Saturday. And we did have 6 families show up, ask questions about where we were and what was going on. We gave them some wine. And ultimately, like, this was sort of back in the beginning. These are the public hearing. This was probably in 2021. You can see like the positive and negative, and the negative was around noise for one person, where the vines weren't planted yet. So is it really going to be a vineyard? Daryl has repeatedly mentioned that he's concerned about enforcement of the township, and we'll talk about where that led. Traffic, drunk drivers, sort of the themes that we carried into the conditional use permit. And so what happened with these neighbor concerns that I summarized here is we formed a committee, and we invited any neighbor who wanted to participate in the committee. And the committee's goal was to try to come up with a conditional use permit that everybody could live with. Nobody's going to be happy with, but everybody could live with, us included. The list was, Daryl was on there and many other neighbors, and we met 6 times, and then we basically met, and then we went to the planning commission, iterated back around again. And we went through a number of drafts, but at the end of the process, I think the general feeling at the time that this was approved was that everybody was in agreement that this was a manageable situation and mutually the best outcome for everybody. The conditions are listed here. There's 12 of them, and they're in the packet. I won't read through each one of them, but I'll point out. So as we see the just standard text here, the yellow ones were the ones that were completed from us to the neighbors through the process to make this go. 65 limit, music only inside and inaudible at the property line, amplified music only inside, no weddings, receptions are related. So I heard the word party barn earlier. We're not allowed to do weddings. And if you go to any party barn, they're weddings. We're a winery. And no more than 2 scheduled private events per week, no more than 1 at a time. Operating hours were cut back significantly, 8 p.m. Sunday, 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, with the stipulation that it's not just operating to 10 p.m. We have to have people off the property at 10 p.m., which realistically means like a 9 p.m. close. And then there's 5, 6, 7, and 8 are really kind of the penalties and the punishments. Like if you don't do this, you can revoke the use permit, you can revoke the ability to have amplified music. If we market anything contrary, like if we have a marketing saying you can do your wedding here, like that proves as evidence that any neighbor can take to the township to invoke action and stuff. So we agreed to all these things. We feel like we're gonna work hard and be a good neighbor. And at the end of the day, we don't want them to hear anything. And I'm encouraged because I heard one of our fireworks parties, the neighbors couldn't hear music, and we had live music outside because that was a special exception. So I think we can do this. we're investing our money, we're putting everything into this. But then the ones in yellow now are the ones that we needed in this process. One was the ability to request up to 2 events per year that go outside of the scope of this, plus the fireworks. And those requests would be handled by the trustee board, and ultimately they could approve or deny us. So they could deny our fireworks, and we asked for 2 more events. That was very important because we might need 1 or 2 big events to make this thing get off the ground. 10 was that after 12 months, we would have the ability to apply for additional conditions on the conditional use or changes of operating hours, occupancy, anything that's in here, we could come back and it outlines a process where we would notify the neighbors. They would have the opportunity to participate in this. We also have a hotline set up as a part of this where every message they leave gets logged and tracked, and the town has access to that. So there's a hotline, there's audio recordings, and there's a process by which any expansion we would do would be, they would be notified. And likewise, if there's any kind of failure on our part to perform to this, the conditional use can be revoked, which is not something that the other conditional agritourism uses in Scio Township have. So that is how we got here, and I think we talked about those key items for us. So I'll kind of pass it. The last one that's specifically noted is that we'll retain everything that we would be retained under right to farm. So those were the 3 events, 2+1, the ability to expand, and that this permit would not impose any restrictions granted to us by an agricultural right to farm. That's where like the pavilion were to come in, or if we were to have a farm operation go after 10 p.m., right to farm has its own set of GAMPs that we would be regulated by. The conditional use was granted in 2022 of September. I feel like from my recollection, and maybe Jan can comment on this, I feel like when we reached that resolution, all sides rested. There was like a consensus that we had reached a level of agreement. Now it's been 2+ years since then, so I understand why we're sort of back in this place, and people are also raising concerns again. To be fair, we've been really busy trying to get this off the ground, and I had no idea that we would have water retention and soil studies and runoff and drainage, septic field perking all over the place, health department, fire, parking, road permits, sign designs. We had to hire an attorney to go after Consumers Energy because they didn't want to let us put a retention pond on top of the gas line, which we finally have made progress on. This has just been a journey for us. And then, you know, all of the other things that have come with getting to this point. So I think it's sort of, this is at the moment where it's sort of time to just review what we brought to you. And I just want to take 2 more minutes to talk about the public comments to make sure we covered them. Daryl had 7 points in his comments. So 1 was the guest capacity and parking limitations. And I hope we've made it clear that the 4th of July was an anomaly, one that the trustee board is also aware of and will work together to not recreate. But in terms of Social Vines and its 85 capacity parking, if anything, the 4th of July should have demonstrated that we're well beyond the capability to park 85 people on the property without a traffic issue. He also mentioned that, you know, early capacity was limited to a much lower amount, and I think it was just maybe a misrecollection. We do have all the original applications. 150 was our first ask. The indoor versus outdoor areas, his point to ask about that. It does say specifically in there that amplified music can only be in the tasting room with the doors and windows closed and must be inaudible at the property line. There's 6 other music provisions there as well. So I believe the sort of indoors with the windows closed and the doors closed covers the intent of the permit, but also the fact that it needs to be inaudible at the property line, and we're going to be recording sound. I feel like that's the backup, but the permit covers music 7 different ways because it was a big concern for them. He mentions the parking seasonal versus year round and the paved versus gravel, which we heard from another neighbor. We didn't want paved, but the fire department did. And I think the gravel also came from the fire review. It wasn't a desire of ours to, because a lot of consequences have come from that with respect to the water retention and soil issues, but I think the fire department had a large turning radius requirement for the trucks, and they also needed accessibility in sort of all circumstances. So that was driven by the fire department. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you just say the paving was a request of theirs?
It was handicap or fire department?
ADA accessible, you have to have pavement. So we've got 2 ADA spaces, and so we need an ADA accessible route to the front door as well. So that has to be concrete.
I think it's like 2 or 4 spots that are paved.
2,
plus the
just
apron.
2.
So not the whole lot.
Yeah.
And it's reflected in the site plan,
Right.
but you know, for us, like, please, could we have grass? That would be much more affordable if we get there. There was a mention on the fire department capacity in the 85. I mean, our understanding is 85 is the capacity that we're allowed through this agritourism permit, and that's what we posted. So that's how I understand it now. Like we mentioned, we are engineering septic field and other key elements. The parking lot's not engineered for 200 potential and expansion, but we got plenty of field. So I think that's a lower risk item, but the septic field is. Mentioned the fireworks. Yeah, we own it. There was a photo of a vendor parked on the street. That's our water guy. Our house is 20 feet off the street. And so we have Amazon, UPS, Absolute Pure Water. We tell them not to do that. And then they get a new driver on the route and they do it again. I don't know why they don't turn down our driveway. It's super unsafe, but it's one of the perils of the site we live on. I don't think though that any vendors are gonna park on the street because it's 600 feet from where they'd be delivering. And the Washtenaw County Road Commission has a whole plan for how they're gonna access the site. Frankly, we have semis come in all the time. It's never been an issue except when they don't want to. So then a couple from tonight, I want to make sure we just check them all, the capacity limit, pavilion, the Carlisle Workman, 33 to 44 on the parking, 22 is only required. 44 was really because in a wine experience, you're going to have 1 or 2 people in a car, get to 85 versus your typical parking where you might have 4 people in a car. Talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 people in a car is typically reserved for assembly. Most commonly, in my experience, has been church, families going to church together. My personal experience in going to wineries is it's most frequently attended by a couple. They come in pairs, and so capacity of 85 patrons is not going to be 22 cars. It's going to be more than that. So that's why we chose that number.
And that's at full capacity.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean, we're not gonna do that all the
Yeah.
time, so.
We talked about the grass and gravel, the bus transportation and the fire department. Those requirements were imposed by the fire department. See, Washtenaw County Roads is involved in this process, which we'll touch on. The enforcement was another point that was brought up tonight, and I'd just like to point out that we actually built enforcement policy and the conditional use together, that everybody felt like not only allowed people to turn us in if we weren't acting, but it gave the township more teeth than they have in any other case. And I'm not sure if there's any other situation inside of township where a business has a inaudible at the property line restriction, but we were okay with that. And we were okay with the sound recording because we don't want to be a burden to the neighbors. Okay, I think we covered that. All right, so just walking through the final submission, this is what the rendering of the barn will look like. I apologize, it's not the most professional. I did it in chief design. And it's really the original barn you see. With the center, we added a vestibule because the concern of sound was we need to have a double doorway to get in there. So we added the vestibule, and then we're like, well, if we're there, why don't we just put a covered porch on so it doesn't look so weird? And that's how we ended up where we did. This is the floor plan. I'm just kind of walk up here for a second. So this is the red barn. It's right by bushes. This is the 20-something feet added for restrooms in the kitchen. And then this is the vestibule, and this is just covered porch on either side. To just show the layout. And then this is 3D rendering of what it might look like inside. This is the layout with some tables. You can see sort of roughly how we get to how many people would fit in there. And this is just an empty floor plan of the same. There is a loft in the barn. I don't know if we'll be able to keep it or not. It's gonna depend on the building permits and everything else. It's pretty small. It's less than 30 feet. We drew it up. It's in the plans. If we can keep it, we'd like to, but if it, you know, ceiling heights or code or something else may prevent it. And there's a basement in the plans, which we're just gonna use for wine barrel and finished storage of wine. The site plan, this is kind of Scott's, or do you want to talk about anything? And
Yeah, we'll just field questions when they inevitably come up.
okay.
And Scott, would you just talk a little bit about the gas line and why there wasn't an easement? And because every gas line I've seen has an easement, you can't even disturb anything above it.
Yeah, well, this gas line was put in 1940 something. And it's just a blanket easement across the property. It's an undefined easement, no legal description or anything of the easement. And so they actually, you know, they can't restrict you from using the property and occupying over the top of it. And so we had, Consumers Energy came back and said, well, this is what we've done before. And they gave us a copy of a report by a geotechnical engineer who evaluated the depth of in another case, the depth of this other gas main that Consumers Energy owns and what the use was going to be. And they came to the determination that there'd be no adverse impact by whatever this other petitioner was planning on doing. And so we hired the same firm to come out and do that same evaluation. And we sent it back to Consumers Energy and they said, yeah, okay, this will work. We'd have a couple of recommendations for you that we'd like you to follow. We'd like to have someone out on site when you're immediately impacting over the top of it, working around it and everything. But so it's all but worked itself out now.
With a few lawyers.
With a few lawyers, yeah.
And I think we also have.
The first response was no. And then when the lawyers started looking at it, it's like, well, you actually can't say no. So.
Few lawyers and many months.
Mhm.
Few dollars. This one in Scott's plan, I think it's just worth pointing out, this is the area on the property. This is our house and the current barn and our pole barn. This is the area where this is. So you can see the existing pavilion is right there. The driveway comes in through this tree area, and then right here is where the relocated barn is. You can see like this is the paved amount right here. Just the apron and the spots, and then this is the gravel area. And then we have another drawing where we'll show the barrier that we're putting up, and then this is the vineyard. And of course, the retention pond.
So where will the relocated barn go?
It's going from right on the road to right here. It's in this field that's enclosed by trees.
Yeah.
So it's almost on the center of the property, sort of east to west.
It's by the vineyard.
Show her on the black and white.
Right
Oh.
where the vineyard is that it?
Here, yeah, yeah, and that's the vineyard right there. Drawings, more drawings. This is just the barrier. And we'll probably end up with more trees in this, but we're gonna do rows of evergreens along the vineyard. We're probably also gonna have a nice big deer fence here as well. Just for additional buffering, even though we have hundreds of feet of trees. We're a big fan of the evergreens. If you drive down Dexter Ann Arbor, you'll see 100 of them in front of our property. Just, they do a great job of screening things. This is the sign that we're proposing. That'll be 15 feet from the right of way. 4 foot by 4 foot. All the lighting is to code. And Scott could talk more about that. This is just the narrative. It's already in there. I don't think we need to read it. These are the conditions of use that were approved by the planning commission. The operational information aligns with that. So what's notable from September 22nd till now on the plans, one is the covered porches. We didn't talk about that before, but we felt like it would be appropriate to add them and it would look better with the vestibule. And the other is we're asking the township to not ask us to put a sidewalk in. Because it appears the code or zoning typically has a sidewalk installed when something like this is done. We're talking about over 1,000 feet of sidewalk. Economically, it would be devastating to our plans. I thought I had a slide on that, but I guess I don't. Come back. So the OHM report, which is in the packets, they said the plans are recommended for approval. And they had some comments about stormwater, so we mentioned we're working with consumers and expect approval on that. They had some additional comments, and I don't think we need to run through these, but I sent it to you. It's everything that they had asked for to be pointed out. Scott has either responded to them with, or it's in flight. Washington County Road Commission, it says we should have a certificate from them. That's been provided as part of this process. Geotechnical will be provided with the engineering submittal. These are all just sort of the clarifications of what they're trying to make sure we meet. And like I said, I won't go through all of them, but we check the boxes that they raised and we back to these. Road Commission, Water Resource Commission, then even through Health Department in the process. PNC is in process. So then Carlisle Workman also had a report. And I highlighted some of the things that they had no issues with: setback, natural resources, building location, floor plan and elevations and variances. They pointed out that we needed to demonstrate that grapes were planted. So they're happy to come out if the photos aren't enough. It's a 5-minute drive. See the grapes. They also noted the limitation of 85 guests, which the conditional use in our application does reflect that. They noted they said if we increase beyond 85, it's at our own risk, and we agree with that. But we do want to point out that the process by which to increase beyond 85 is what we're asking for, so to request it. They asked what seasonal means. It is reflected in the application that it's basically we're not operating through March. And then it says they refer to the fire marshal, and the fire marshal to approve our plans. That's in the packet as well. Site access says Washington Road Commission needs to approve this. That's underway. Safety paths. So this is the one, the sidewalk safety path issue. And I just put a little more detail in here. From what we've seen, there are no sidewalks on our side of the road, on Dexter Ann Arbor on the north side that you can find in Scio Township. If we had to put one in, it would be a 1,600-foot sidewalk, which is a very big burden for the type of business we're trying to run and build. And we already have retention ponds and handicap parking and a lot of requirements. It also, I think, would damage that side of the road in some ways, because the berm that we created to reduce sound for the neighboring areas, we may have to take it down to do a sidewalk because of how the water drainage is. And it would sort of create this weird situation where you have a sidewalk on an island with nothing else around it. And there's a lot of large mature trees in the area we'd have to cut down. Cutting down trees right by the road is always something that makes me anxious, just because of their positioning. So that's our ask, is to not have the sidewalk requirement imposed on us. And I think, Scott, you had said that the alternative is.
Yeah, I mean, you could volunteer to be a part of the special assessment district, should it be formed to do this in the future. My thought is, most likely, if this does happen in sometime in the future, it more than likely is going to be through a grant. It's not going to be funded by the township. It's an unfunded project. It's just an idea of something that could happen in the future. So the likelihood of it happening anytime, in the near future is probably pretty slim.
Also, like the research I've done is that the other side of the road has an 85-foot right of way from when they were going to build a trolley car from Dexter to Ann Arbor in the 1900s, and that right of way still exists. So the likelihood that they would take land on our side for the right of way is not capable of handling a sidewalk across the road, is sort of unlikely. Carlisle mentioned the, waiver for the green belt, may be warranted. And so we just kind of looked through the standards for the green belt and we think we comply based on the property size, access to roads, buffering, off-street parking, operational information posted, the music requirements. We believe we comply, so we weren't quite sure why a waiver might be needed, but maybe they can mention that. They asked for information on the lighting. This is just a photo of what we were thinking for the solar lighting we wish to use. It's just low intensity solar downlit in the parking area. And then it says the sign needs to be 15 feet from the right of way. That is in our plans. It's not a problem. Sorry. Go ahead. So yeah, just in summary, we appreciate your consideration on this project and listening through it. We think that this is a really well-aligned use of our property with the Scio Township Master Plan. Placing a vineyard and winery directly between Dexter and Ann Arbor on agricultural land in an area where that's the desire to be green belt. We feel like while we understand the neighbors' discomfort and we've had a lot of conversations and a lot of the theme with them has been, we appreciate you working with us, but we still feel the need to voice our opinion to the township so it's heard and we appreciate that. But they have been an integral part of these discussions and the terms that were crafted. And we feel like this can be in harmony, you know, no audible sound, like the things we've reached. We feel like the vineyard and the space will really help Scio meet its open and rural characteristics. And the agritourism permit really does create a set of checks and balances I don't think this township's ever seen in an agritourism permit or many things where the level of requirement on us to comply is just much higher, much different than other scenarios. We're okay with those. We've reached this together. I think we've reached the end.
Thank you. What I'd like, if you could just talk a little bit about, start with the process and, you know, because we have new planning commissioners, a little bit about the conditional use, what this is, what the process is, because this is a site plan and we only the preliminary site plan and then the engineering, just, you know, sort of the big picture, and then we can dive in.
Sure. So this is a multi-step process and we're at step 2, right? So as the applicant indicated, the conditional land use was approved in 2022. And as part of the conditions of the conditional use permit, they had to establish the vineyard before they could come back before you for step 2, which is where we're at now for site plan review of the tasting room. So all of the talk we had tonight about anything to do with the use, the conditional use has already been established, that we're not reopening it for additional people or occupancy. We're not modifying the amplified noise criteria that we put in the conditional use. This is the next step, talking about how they can move the barn and create the tasting room that was always meant to be part of the conditional use permit that was approved previous. Once the planning commission is determined that you are prepared to make a recommendation to the board, that could be tonight, it could be at some future meeting. You make a recommendation, then after they have received the Washtenaw County Road Commission approvals, their final water resources approval, all of the additional items, any conditions that you place upon the site plan, they would have to be corrected before they go to the board for their final approval. The board has the final say over the approval of the site plan. They can approve it as they provide it. They can approve it with additional conditions, site plan conditions, not use conditions. So we're at step 2. Once this moves forward with a recommendation to the board, that will be the last step. in this process. And from there, the applicant, if they're approved, they would finalize their permitting. They'd have a pre-construction meeting. They'd have to ask for zoning compliance approval through the township before they can go with their building permits. So that's where we're at. As far as the comments, generally speaking, we did not have a lot of comments on the site plan. The way the barn will be situated is not visible, we don't believe, from neighbors and from the road. So when we talked about landscaping, we just wanted to make sure that the planning commission was comfortable that as part of your review, you could request additional buffering or screening in locations where you may feel it's needed. I don't know that it's needed. The other item that Brian brought up is the safety path. I understand their plea, but it's in our master plan that this area is planned for a non-motorized access path. And it's also in our ordinance when a non-motorized path is noted in the master plan, that when a site plan is required, this type of thing would be vetted and completed.
That's the trigger, is when a site plan is
Yeah,
needed.
it
I
says-
wondered what the trigger was.
Yeah, it says section 36-277 indicates that the path must be constructed, in quotes, for any development subject to site plan review. So.
The pavilion wasn't a site plan review?
No.
Okay.
No, so it's, typically when you have a site plan, you're in a commercial area, and this is a little bit different, but I don't think that the planning commission has the authority to waive this. This is either a variance from the zoning board of appeals, or it is something that the board is gonna have to take up when they meet to make the final detail engineering site plan decision. With regard to the parking, the planning commission has the right to amend or allow for less or more parking depending upon a particular use. The applicant is asking for additional parking for their, based on the 85 per person occupancy, and that they'd like the two, when two people come, as opposed to the calculation for a 4-person capacity. So that's again something the planning commission can determine whether it is suitable. I'll just reiterate that, yes, the gravel and the concrete is based on the fire marshal and the need for emergency accessibility to the site, and to be able to safely access the tasting room and the parking lot if there were ever an emergency that needed to be assisted with at that location. Those are my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question about the spaces. I'm looking at your page 4, your memo at the top. Obviously I didn't read this correct, but the applicant is asking for how many spaces? Maybe I should ask it that way.
Let's see,
45,
44 spaces.
44.
Okay, then I did read it right.
They're required to have 22
Okay,
based on a banquet facility. We don't have a tasting room
I understand.
outlined in our ordinance, so we're looking at the most similar use. But like I said, the planning commission can determine whether or not they would like to grant more or less parking for any specific use, based on what they feel their needs are.
Other questions for us?
So along those lines, when we say parking spaces, what about using grass? Is that additional, or is that counted in the number?
No.
No, not in
Okay.
this.
This wouldn't be, that would still be obviously available for overflow, but not for the meeting the site plan.
Are the 44 spaces including the handicap
Yes.
spaces?
Then we'll go to OHM. Is it
Good
Stacy?
evening. Yep, I'm here.
Hi.
We recommended these plans in our letter from October 9th. We had one outstanding comment that has been mentioned by the applicant in their presentation. We just want to see written approval from consumers for the construction of their detention basin over that gas main. We recommended with this comment because there is still sufficient space to accommodate this basin somewhere else if needed. But it sounds like the discussions with consumers are going well and they anticipate getting that approval.
I have a question for Laura.
Yeah.
How many stories is the barn?
Well, it's 1 story with a loft. So it's a 1-story structure.
So the basement is not,
Doesn't count as a story.
okay, so 1 story with the loft, not, I thought in the materials provided by the applicant that they referred to that as, that it could be used for extra seating.
Only
If
up to
it's-
85 people.
That was the law.
But use the loft for.
They could, it doesn't, having the loft doesn't change that they're only allowed to have 85 people.
So this was my question. If you use it for seating, does that become a 2nd story?
No, it's like a mezzanine or something. It's not a story would be the full length of a.
And is it your understanding this outdoor porch in the back, outdoor porch on the front, there would be no music in those areas?
Yeah, that's part of the conditional use permit.
I understand the
Yeah.
conditional use language. I helped them craft it, so I'm pretty clear on that, but I just want to make sure. Because the building has expanded down and up, however you want to call it, stories.
That doesn't change the conditional use permit and the provisions for completely enclosed amplified music
In
Okay.
the tasting room.
in the tasting.
Yep.
Not on the floor, not in the pavilion.
So it couldn't even be downstairs. It has to be in the.
And I noticed that your memo points out that the applicant is changing things, septic and all that, to accommodate a larger group of people, but I note that you noted in your memo that there was no indication that
They are doing that at their own risk.
doing that at their own risk.
With no, I mean, at some point in the future, they can request additional occupancy
Right.
at their risk.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
I have a question for Stacy. Stacy, in the drawing package, it shows, I didn't get it ready for me to ask this, but there's a cross section showing the driveway with 2 slopes from the center line. Are you aware of where I'm talking about in the drawing?
No, I don't actually have the plans pulled up at the moment. I can if that would be helpful.
Well, it actually says that it's for, in the cross section, it says it's for the driveway and the parking area. And I don't see how it could be for the parking area since, although it isn't dimensioned, it shows the slopes going both ways. Is that how you're gonna do the parking area too?
The cross section is more to represent how much stone is there. What the drawing, the detail you're looking at there really is more applicable to the driveway. But the point is that the parking lot would also be constructed the same 6 inches of compacted 21 AA
So
gravel.
that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And this is all going to be detailed before it goes to the Board of Trustees, or are they gonna see this drawing package?
They're gonna see more than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll also have the parking area cross-section in there probably. Okay, good, thank you.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
This sidewalk that's been brought up, first you said 2,000 feet, then it was 1,600 feet, but regardless, is this sidewalk inside of the property or along Dexter on the road?
So it would potentially be in the right, it should be in the right of way, along Dexter. But, they bring up a good point that, if there's additional right of way on the other side of the road, it may not be feasible to put it in front of their road anyway. That's why I think this is something the Board of Trustees is we're gonna have to do a little bit more research before it goes to them, so we have some clear answers.
So I'm not clear on how the other across the street right away affects that side of the road.
Well,
Your
so
side of the road.
maybe Stacy can help with this a little bit, but the right of way is only so wide. And in some cases, there's more right of way on one side of the road due to terrain, topography or some other. And in this case, it appears that, I don't know this to be true, but they're saying there's additional right of way on the opposite side of the road that may provide a better location for the walkway as
Because
opposed
of
to
the
on-
right of ways
because of
width.
the width of the right of way on that side of the road as opposed to their side of the road.
And so what are the numbers on their side of the road?
Well,
This is so unclear to me what I understand the point you're trying to make, but I don't know what the width of it is. Are you saying that a sidewalk wouldn't fit in on your side of the road? Or are you just saying that it's better to put it on the other side of the road?
If you look at from like downtown Dexter to Zeep Road, where a sidewalk would go, on the south side, they have a right of way that's almost 80 feet. On our side, I think it's 20 feet.
But it's measured from the center of the road, is it not 66 feet in total?
It's 66 feet of total width. I think there's probably 33 feet on the north side. And then I'm not aware of the situation on the south side, but it's not unbelievable because the Bolin right of way extended all the way from Ann Arbor out and goes through Dexter and goes out on Dexter Chelsea Road. That's the right of way they were using for part of the new path, border to border trail as well. So it may very well be on the south side of Dexter, Ann Arbor Road between Zeeb and Dexter. I don't know that. I can't attest that.
So I just want to talk about the sidewalk. So what would be the width of our required sidewalk?
It's 5 feet.
5 feet wide, so it would fit in the 33.
It would probably be more than that because it'd be a multi-purpose pathway. It'd probably be, 8 to 10 feet, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I just want, so from those numbers you're throwing out now, you could meet our requirement of the sidewalk. It's just that you don't want to pay for it because it's costly.
The ditch, if you will, on our side of Dexter and our road drops like 12 feet. And there's water in there. It's like a drainage ditch.
So I'm gonna ask it again. The width of before you get to the ditch would accommodate our requirements for a sidewalk. Is that not true?
If it were 10 feet, it would put the sidewalk 6 feet from our front door. But- And you could probably take down 300 trees to get it. So yeah, I suppose it's theoretically possible.
Well, those trees that you just mentioned are in the right of way, not on your property? Okay, well, that's what construction is. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just related to that, on any of your drawings, do you show the right of way along Dexter Ann Arbor Road? Can you point out, like on sheet 5, I'm looking at the road and I don't see it defined. It may be there, there's lots of lines there. But right along the road, which it shows in the lower left-hand corner of that drawing, I don't see it ever say right of way.
Yeah.
That's where I thought we could nail it down as to where do we have to go or.
If you looked at sheet 4, you'll see the most outboard lines. On the south side, for instance, it's the long dashed line.
On your side, on the south side?
On the south side, yes. It's the long dashed line. On the north side, it's the darker line. It's overwritten with the property line. So that's the limits on the Heron side.
So there isn't a whole lot of.
And what,
And that's where the driveway approach is going to be.
Yes. Yep.
That's where you show the driveway approach.
Yep.
So the sidewalk would have to go over the top of the driveway approach.
Yep.
So that sort of shows it.
so from what I hear in these responses, it's feasible to put the side, you tend to put the side.
It might fit. It would fit a lot better if you had an additional easement. I mean, it's not very comfortable to put a sidewalk right up against the 55-mile-an-hour road. So,
Without any space.
Got a lot of, you got, first it's the south side's better than the north side, now it's the speed of the road.
well, I mean, it's just, you'd like to have it as far away from the cars as possible, so.
What do people do with the sidewalk getting closer to Dexter?
I can't see.
When they're on the same Dexter and Arbor Road?
I'm not,
I can't tell you exactly how far away it is, but it's also, when you get into Dexter, there's curb as well.
30, 25
Yeah, the speed limit drops down to 25 miles an hour.
About in bushes.
Yeah, it's
The
down to
sidewalk
35.
there is
35 there.
It's 40.
Yeah, it
Well,
goes-
no, it's 40.
40 and then you get into Dexter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I also want to remind people, I think Laura said, we don't have, the planning commission
It's not a
can't
problem.
grant
Yeah.
that variance,
We have to
so
make a recommendation.
that can be up to us.
Yeah.
I think the point of the discussion is that it's possible to meet our ordinance. That's the point. That's why I wanted to kind of drill down on what the numbers were. I've heard all these other reasons why we shouldn't do it, which was some more room on the south side.
I'd like to point out that I have a problem with just adding this random sidewalk in the middle of Dexter Ann Arbor for 1,600 feet. And then it just stops, it goes nowhere, and it's just their property line. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, when there isn't any ability to continue it or plan for continuing it, and you're putting this burden on them that it's just this, and a massive burden. It's not even just a small burden, it's just a massive burden, and I just can't stand that it's just there.
Yeah, so the idea is that, and I may be completely wrong about this, Laura, so you correct me if I am, is that we make that a requirement up front, because if we take that position that you just stated, we wouldn't have
It would
any,
never, right,
they would never get built.
right,
And
but
we've had,
this
let me
is,
just finish, there have been other people, other
Develop.
developers, thank you,
that have gotten.
along Jackson Road that have asked us the same thing.
Sure,
Because they say, well, right now, there's nobody walking down there, there's
Right.
nobody walking down Jackson Road. West of Baker, there's nobody walking, so. I just wanted to, that's one of the
I
reasons why.
understand that, but yet is there really going to be a future for connecting, you know, this sidewalk, you know, along Dexter Ann Arbor, i.e. with development, et cetera, or is it just gonna be randomly there?
And that's why there's a provision for having it be put off until it's directed that it will be done.
Right.
And then you do it all at once with either, as they said, a grant or with private payments, whatever.
Is that, I think
However
that's, that Laura's memo addresses that, or am I thinking of something
Yeah,
else?
that's true.
For the escrow fund?
So typically, you know, but the ordinance, you know, the ordinance is speaking to when it is a commercial, you know, site plans are required for commercial development.
Mhm.
This is an agricultural property that is requesting a conditional use, which is required to have a site plan. There's a little bit of a you know, the ordinance doesn't speak to that, right? The ordinance says if you have a site plan, then you're required to do this. But this is a little one-off. You know, this isn't an area where, there's, like Laura said, that there's potentially gonna be lots of development and we're gonna see connections down, Dexter Ann Arbor Road. I think in looking at the plan and seeing, the topography and the distance, that's allotted on that side of the road, that right of way, it's very limited. So I think, you know, it's something that we should make a recommendation to the board to either look into further or to come to some other agreement with the applicant for future connection, if and when that becomes reality through a grant or through some other mechanism.
I've got another question, Laura, for this Greenbelt waiver, where is that located? Where were you talking? Is that along Dexter Ann Arbor or is that up by the barns and everything?
No, Dexter, so all of our landscaping requirements are in, I think, section 36 346 or 246. But, you know, it talks about every development that has a site plan has to provide green belt and screening from adjacent uses and those types of things. So, but the planning commission can provide a waiver or approve alternative landscaping for any use. And I think based on what they've demonstrated, how it's screened, how far back from the road it is, I think that you can say that they've met those requirements.
From the satellite view, where you're placing, well, where you have the vines, there was or is sort of a bunch of trees that are, is it still there?
Hundreds of feet of trees in every direction.
And then it'll stay there, or, so the barns are gonna be on the inside of that, right up against basically the vines that you can see from satellite. So, okay.
Laura, you're on page 7 of your memo, you talk about your recommendations. Number 3, define what seasonal means.
So
Meaning their seasons of operation.
So yeah, the conditional use permit says April through October.
Right.
We were just trying to make sure they were saying, yeah, we're still doing April through October. And
So they have to
confirm that. Yeah,
It's
they
in the
confirmed
permit.
it. Yep.
Okay, all
We
right.
just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page.
Okay. I have a
Yeah,
question
Heather.
about the
So go ahead.
the barn in the addition, which I think you're using in the kitchen and bathrooms. Was that anticipated when the conditional use was granted?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
They have to have the bathrooms. And the kitchen isn't a real kitchen, correct?
Yeah.
One kitchen.
Yeah.
It's not meant for catering.
Banquets.
It's not a commercial.
Then I had another question about the barn. I drive by there fairly frequently. And I noticed that barn structure is really deteriorating. So do you think you'll be able to actually use that structure?
We do, the roof on the barn failed a couple of years ago, and so what you're seeing is the barn siding starting to come off of it, and the foundation is also cracking. So we know we have to do something soon, but the post and beam structure inside is solid, so we do feel like, and there will be engineering involved in ensuring that it's built to code and safe.
I'm just curious, how much percentage wise do you think you'll be able to salvage?
All of it.
Okay.
All of the timbers.
Yeah.
The structure.
Not the siding. They're gonna put SIPs on instead.
Right.
Because essentially like the barn wood that's on the outside, we're gonna use on the inside as a finish. And then we're gonna do an insulated panel wrap for sound, and then we'll probably have a metal barn siding on the outside. We just don't have enough material in that to do an insulated, you know, sort of one wall instead of two situation.
So I have another question. Your recommendation number 7 regarding the coach lights, number 8, is the applicant agreeable with
I
that?
believe I saw their presentation earlier, I was flipping through it, and they did say, yes, they would modify their lighting, and we would make sure of that during detail engineering.
But they haven't done it yet on the plan, so we need to make it part of our recommendations so the board would look for that.
Well, it would be corrected before it even gets to the board.
Correct.
Yeah, because that's also part of the ordinance.
Likewise, number 10 regarding the sign, the positioning of the sign. So if we have in our motion, we refer to your memos recommendations that those be.
Yes, those will all be addressed.
I have another question regarding the neighbors. Right, I heard you say that you had told, or however you contacted the neighbors on the north side of Dexter Ann Arbor. What about the folks on the south side?
We sent them letters, so the last meeting we had this Saturday at our property, we mail everybody within a reasonable proximity letters. I think we sent out 30 letters. We did include people on the south side. The conversations we've had, we know some of them are fine with this, but the traffic is really concerned because Dexter is so loud. There's not really a concern that the Bridgewood Hills folks have. But they haven't been as active in this process. We take that as maybe they're not.
Did you notify Andrea Streeter?
Yes, he did, but I received, my postmark was the 7th. What was the date? Saturday?
The 11th.
And I already had plans. It wasn't a lead time enough for me to get there on that date.
Other commissioners have any comments or questions? I think one other question.
Yeah. They're supposed to prove to the township that they've planted grapevines, et cetera. So they're showing us pictures, but have they actually gone through the process? Like how much is
No, so-
on them to actually say, hey, you know, come out and check this and see?
So before this can go to the board, I'm gonna have to go out there and look at the grapes.
Tough job.
But yes, that's part of the
You
next.
didn't think you needed to bother for us?
It's kind of cold today, Kim. I mean.
Yeah.
And I tried to find your Instagram because you sent out, we got the Instagram pictures and it's gone. So that's why I'm asking, because it's like, okay, you had pictures, but you don't now.
Christmas
So what's
present
going
on
on?
Facebook was they disabled her personal and business accounts and we're still trying to get them recovered.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not sure why.
okay.
So I'm probably gonna have to start over. But
Start a new one.
So I was curious about your yield on the 2 acres. What did you get last year or this year? In tonnage?
Tonnage is about, in total, I think we got, this year.
Can you speak up?
4 to 5 tons.
4 or 5 tons.
Yeah, on average, I have hybrids, which are super vigorous. They're still young, so I'll probably get more. It was a good year, though, but they generally yield between 4 and 7, like an acre. So I think I could get upwards of 12.
And you planted how many acres again? 2.
So it is a very small.
Right.
It is small.
There's one thing about and Laura, this is gonna be an interesting piece because the building code requires you in an assembly use, which they're considered an assembly use at 85 people, to put the maximum capacity of a sign, a literal sign, just like we have here, and it's based on square footage. So what we're gonna have to do is work with them, saying that from a zoning standpoint, we need to have a capacity lower than that.
It's my understanding that the fire marshal sets that occupancy.
It's based on the code.
I know it
and
is,
the fire
but
code.
the fire marshal is aware of our
Okay.
85.
But the building inspector will ask for that as well. So that's gonna require some coordination with
I will,
the
well,
building department.
I will actually let the fire marshal do that coordination
Okay,
because
exactly.
he deals with them a lot.
Okay,
in
yeah.
inspections.
Because that'll be a little.
So I have a question for.
Yeah.
The hearings. So just reviewing the permit that was provided in 22. And, number 1 talks about a telephone complaint hotline shall be established for use of township residents. I didn't see you refer to that in your.
I glossed over it. I was trying to go
I'm
fast.
sorry.
I believe it's one of the
Show me
top
that.
5 items. I think it's number 1 is that we'll have a telephone hotline. So we can use a voice over IP system that essentially records all calls and tracks and reports how many calls did we have at what time. And all of that. So that's our plan.
As part of your reporting to the township about complaints and stuff.
If we were to ask for more occupancy or if we were to have a review with the township, we would be providing the sound recordings. Now, the sound recordings, we're only required to keep them for 60 days. That's because it's very large files to record sort of high fidelity sound. So if we don't have an issue within 60 days, it's a 60-day rolling on the sound, but the voice calls will be a perpetual record of all recorded voice calls and complaint line. And I think that really serves for the township as a mechanism to see like what's going on.
Once we get a call, you know, if there is a complaint, then that's probably the first thing the ordinance officer is gonna do, say, we'd like to see your noise and your telephone.
Is there an enforcement officer?
There's one right at home.
I know, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, and I do agree with also the suggestion that and thank you for taking this seriously, the noise ordinance and the enforcement, making sure that we have the adequate staff for enforcement. Kathleen's on it. Okay, go ahead.
I just have one more question. It's on your memo that you wrote on January 6th. On page 2, I don't know who wrote it. Did you, Scott, or you?
I think you're referring to one Brian wrote.
So on page 2, you say under use intentions that it's like the third sentence in wine sales and any potential on-site consumption. They're just talking about the pavilion. What on-site consumption in the pavilion are you allowed? Is that under the licensing from the state?
Farm allows people to purchase the agricultural products and to consume them, but it's highly regulated.
And consume them,
Yeah.
right?
We're not allowed to have events, but they can buy and consume them under the Michigan Regulatory Authority.
Not sampling, or is it sampling?
It can be sampled or consumed.
This is under the Right to Farm Act.
Yeah.
Okay.
So theoretically, we could do all of that without any of this process, but there would then be no events. There would be no assemblies.
No music, no, it would just be under the pavilion. You wouldn't need the barn.
Right. So this does have the benefit of reusing that barn, which is in bad shape and not in a good location.
How old is the barn?
30 years old on the right of way.
Yeah.
It used to be the highway.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that you've got some nice timbers on the inside. Oh, that's cool. So they are gonna be on the inside because your drawings
I
don't show that.
I didn't have the time to like.
The detail.
There, yeah.
There'll be details about, in the drawings, there'll be details about what you'll be filling in or demolition of the old, I mean, the foundation will have to be buried. And is that gonna be showing on the drawings? That would be, right?
I think the right of way, I don't know if we show up there, but I mean, essentially our plan, that row of trees and that little berm, we want to continue it all the way to the drive. So we'll move the barn. We'll essentially demo out the foundation. We might reclaim some of the foundation rock because it's kind of cool.
Yeah, but I mean, that'll all be shown on the detailed drawings.
It's just by a note that it'll be
Yeah.
demolished, yeah. Yeah.
But change in grading.
And
so
then the
forth
grading
needs to
would be shown.
Shown,
That's, okay.
because
thank you.
that'll trigger the soil erosion plan and that type of stuff.
As well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know you didn't go into that detail, but just.
So I'm hearing from folks that are we prepared to make a motion?
Are we all right with expanded parking?
Oh, yeah.
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. Having gone to a few wine tastings, it's usually about self-going, so I understand the want for more.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a banquet, I mean, yes, I think the use really, they argument that the use is, it is different from what the calculation is in my mind. And I would rather have it gravel and people being able to get in and out than grass works great for overflow, but there's a lot of time after rains and so forth that grass does not work.
And fire trucks are
And
terrible in the.
and well, you can't, you have to have
Right.
the appropriate base for the fire truck. So I guess that's where I'm at.
That's where I am too.
Yeah, with both sides of the perspective on the sidewalk. Mine is we kick it to the board because I don't know how to answer it, because if we look at what we've done, we're not doing both sides of Zebra. We've done one side. We're not gonna do both sides of Dexter and Arbor Road. Which side it is, don't know. I can't argue that they have to put it in on the north side when we could do the south side. There's so many conditions on the conditional use and the other. The board has the ability to put a condition in saying, should this be there, then you must do this. But until then, you don't have to.
And I also think that there have been some issues in the past where when a sidewalk has gone in, it hasn't been in the right place. It hasn't been, if we had only done it differently because the overall plan was there. So I agree with some sort of postponement, but, and also I think there is a difference between a commercial development, which has a lot of revenue coming in from it, and an agricultural tourist,
It's off in the future.
Yeah, but this isn't us, this is the board to make.
But I think that would be part of the recommendation.
I would like to steer that recommendation a little bit, just like you were doing, Bob and Jan. And that's like when we see the right of way issues that they had along Zeb Road for that pathway, I would think that we could recommend to the board that they at least nail down a right of way agreement on this property while they've got this in front of them, so they could at least have an agreement that they would be allowed to put it in if in the future it's decided to go in. Maybe not putting it on the drawing, but putting a note that says that they agree that it can go in the future, at least.
The right to be able to put it in.
But I mean, there's
Well,
already
it is-
right away
it is
there.
a
Right,
Yeah.
it's a requirement of the ordinance.
I think what it is some of the pathways have required additional right of way.
Yep, on the private property, in order to actually get it safely. And we did, that's where the discussion about how far off a 50-mile-an-hour road you want to be walking.
So that might be an option to,
We might
Commissioner
have to work that out.
Moore.
So it sounds like we're the comments time of the board or the commission now, so I'm really surprised that we're talking about coming back and asking for expansion. I went through this whole process. I was part of the community process, meeting several times. And listening to neighbors' response to even us approving the project. And in an effort to try to meet the Herons, we came up with the permitted use language you see. Because you're creating a business in a neighborhood. These people live in that neighborhood too, as you do. And so it's not just on Jackson Road, it's in a neighborhood, despite what the speed limit is on Dexter and Arbor Road. So I find it interesting, maybe you're laying the groundwork for it. I get you wanted to spend the money to put the septic in for 200 people and all that, and that's your choice. But as you recall, this was not easy for anybody, as well as the commission, and we stepped out of our comfort zone to meet not individually, but as a group, a community group, to try to work through some fine details that you see in the document, the permit document. So, and a good case in point, I think what the July 4th illustrates is when things went haywire, you closed your gate, but you didn't address the cars that were parked on your neighbor's lawn. And I'm just saying that's what happened. It got more than what you could handle. And that was yours to handle, in my opinion, because that's your event, just like the wine tasting will be your event. So if somebody steps out of the boundaries, you got to be aware of that, and you have to, you got to bring it back in. And I think that's what some of the neighbors are trying to speak to. Where's the enforcement? So, but more importantly, I just wanted to say that we haven't even proven 85 patrons is gonna work. I know you have a lot of hope that that is and belief that it will. But the reason, we put the language in there where you can come and petition us again to expand, but by no means did we agree to that. And, I just wanted to be clear, as I said it during that process before, when we approved it. Because I think many of us on the commission thought it was a nifty idea, wanted to meet you in your desires as a property owner in our township. And so we found a way to do that. But there was never any mention that we were going to be agreeable to any expansion. In particular, we haven't even got off the ground yet. Now, I get it, you gotta do, you don't wanna spend money later expanding a septic field and all that stuff. I get all that, but I just feel like it needs to be said again. And I said it back then in 22, that this is in no way a promise to expand anything. With regard to enforcement, I think it became clear in our discussions within the commission as well as our community group meetings that our enforcement was poor. And one of the things, it depends on community complaints. And the second thing is I think it was loosely being handled by our planning consultant. So we had discussed that we would not do that any longer, that we would have that in-house within the framework of our Scio Township government, because we had, the benefit of a lot of people coming over to talk to us, don't do this project with the heron, don't do this, because look at what's happening to this other place on Scio Church Road. And it became clear that a lot of people that complained about that, and some of them were not so clear about their complaints, but it became clear that the code enforcement or the enforcement of the permit was not real clear. It was not real defined. And the question became, do we want our consultants to do that? So I hope that the board revisits that. And I think as many of our neighbors have come tonight to say, where is the enforcement? I think that should be worked out at the board level, and it should be clear, and there needs to be some policy. And I think it needs to be in-house. I don't think our consultants should be doing that work.
Yeah, just FYI, we don't do code enforcement any longer.
Right.
So there was an in-house
Okay.
person, and since they have left, so it's my understanding the
Right.
board is actively seeking
Okay.
a new person.
It's an
approved position. We had
Okay.
someone occupying that. They resigned.
Okay.
There were concerns about enforcement at the Valley Farm. And frankly, some direction from our township manager, because they would not manage, they would not monitor, which is problematic, right? How can you enforce if you're not monitoring?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why we created monitoring
Yes.
within the body of our permit document, but, okay. I just wanted to say those
Yeah.
two things.
I think there's one other thing, and with the waiver of the landscape ordinance, things can happen to existing woodlots. So I would like, some sort of recognition that we're basing the variance on the maintenance and continuation of those existing woodlots.
I would just add, it's not a variance.
It's a waiver.
Oh,
It's a
waiver,
waiver.
sorry.
Okay.
Yep, no,
Words
correct
matter.
me.
Words
Yes,
matter.
they do. Yes, but somehow that's worked into it. So let's say, I don't know how many are oak trees and, you get oak wilt and all of a sudden, or whatever. And I know a lot of it is done with evergreens and so forth, but some sort of, I don't know, identification of what we're basing that waiver on, the existing buffers, that those need to be maintained, because if they're not maintained, then the whole idea of having that screening goes away.
I just want to point out one other thing. In the master plan, it shows Dexter and Arbor Road as a potential pathway, what is it described as? The question is, which side of the street was it planned?
Yeah, it doesn't show that.
Existing Yeah, I get it. So big, potential priority shared use pathway, future liquid travel.
And a shared use pathway are those wider paths, 8 to 10 feet, and yeah, and they need to be very accessible, and there's a lot of engineering and placement that goes into those. Yep.
Does that matter? I don't.
It's just showing the general,
Okay.
general location.
So, then is there basically a consensus that we can put together a motion? Or approval with, or a recommendation for approval with conditions?
Pull up the suggested.
You prefer the motion?
The model.
That's my memory. What did you want on the agreement?
Oh, there's some sort of designation of what we're.
I just wrote maintain current wooded areas for screening and buffer requirements. It's general.
Yeah.
And you know, they have a property that's larger than 2.5 acres, so any tree removal would fall into our woodland protection ordinance. So I know you're not planning to do that, but they would be allowed to remove 20% of protected trees without any mitigation, but you know, because they're larger than 2.5 acres, they'd have to demonstrate a plan for that to be approved by the zoning official in order to do that.
So as long as we had that stipulated that we're depending on.
Whether you did or didn't, because of
It
the,
was still-
it was still,
It's a
yeah.
requirement.
So it's already covered, is that what you're?
I don't think it hurts to say you would like them to maintain the existing woodland, yeah.
Okay,
Shall I suggest one?
yes, please.
So based on the information received from the applicant reflected in the minutes of this meeting, the planning commission finds that site plan 24014 Social Vines meets the required standards and findings for site plan approval pursuant to section 36-180 of the zoning ordinance and recommends approval. The site plan approval is granted with the following conditions. Concerns noted in the township planner's review dated
December 2nd, 2024.
December 2nd, 2024. With the addition of a comment or a requirement that the landscaping be maintained as it is the natural landscaping. I don't know how we want to word this.
Want to
Laura's
state your notes again, Laura?
The current natural landscaping will be maintained for screening and buffer requirements.
Thank you. Number 2, concerns noted in the township engineer's review dated
October 9th,
October 9th,
2024.
2024. And then we need to have a statement about the requirement for a walkway, a safety path that, how are we gonna word this? That
Can I give you what I wrote down?
Sure.
For the bunch. That the Board of Trustees address with Social Vines the requirement of a shared use pathway on Ann Arbor Dexter Road, potentially with agreement on future right of way. I'm happy to alter that as.
I'm happy with that because, but that only gives the option as a recommendation that we put it off until the future. It doesn't leave the option for of requiring it now, requiring an escrow, or requiring that they allow it to be agreed to in the future.
What are we going to recommend? Because those
Exactly.
items are going to be on your document that the board's going to see.
So I think being my opinion, you have a board member here who may have a different opinion, but my opinion is to leave it open-ended so that the board can work with the applicant to come to some agreement on how they want to address the shared use pathway that's demonstrated in the master plan. I mean,
Just leave it open.
just leave it open. I mean,
And-
what if the board determines that, they're not in a position that they want to do it? Or what if they say, that we know that there's more right of way on, the PPP already knows there's more right of way on the other side of the road and they're already intending to do it there. I don't have answers to those
I'd like to
questions.
just add, taking into account the agricultural or the
Rural.
The use of this property.
the distinct agricultural use of the property as opposed to a typical commercial development.
Okay.
Well, that sounds like you're making a recommendation.
Just taking into account that, it's saying.
Making
and-
them
and
aware.
I don't know, people can disagree with me, but I think it's just, I agree with, Commissioner Kendall that it is typically you're doing that on a commercial property that has, the development, and dollars, invested in it. It's a very small investment as opposed to, in this property, it's a very large property and a very large investment
Percent.
for what is being developed.
So my concern,
Yeah,
as usual,
yeah.
is when we carve out these exceptions without fully thinking them through. So, and by that I mean this. There's Jackson Road to Parker is where our boundaries end. And there's possibility of some residential project going in there at Parker and Jackson Road. And will we say to that, who would be, that developer would be bound by this ordinance as well? It's not commercial, it's residential. So we would hold that developer accountable to put a sidewalk in along Jackson Road.
Okay, so if we wordsmith it, the
Well, I'm
we
just
could
saying
just
with-
say the agricultural context of this development or something like that. Maybe we don't say commercial, but not preclude an
tourism.
investment or a contribution to a future pathway. I mean, it could be something like that. But we're not authorized
deciding,
to waive it. So we're just
Just a
giving an
suggestion.
opinion to the board, or we can just not.
Well, the reason that I asked that question is
Yeah.
because we've had other people come and quote us on different projects to make
That
their
we've done
point,
X, Y,
to
and
make
Z.
their point that why wouldn't you do that for us? So when we're carving out these exceptions, I want to make sure that we leave some leeway, or we're saying what we really mean, what we
Yeah,
mean to say.
exactly.
Yeah, and so maybe the agricultural character is.
Agricultural tourism.
Agricultural tourism character is what to focus on as opposed to the commercial. Good point.
After you get that written down, Bob, can you repeat what you think was said?
Well, I kind of started where, what I had written, and then added in, taking into account the agricultural / tourism use of the parcel. So I think it's fairly open to the board that they just address with social lines. We can't say yay or nay, there's too many open items on it for us to do anything. The board just has to be aware that they make the call, and as Commissioner Morris said, we've done it well at times and we've done it badly at times. But it is on them to make the call.
And then we just have to address the parking, right? That
You would have to, yes, say that you're fine with the.
where we recommend that
Recommend the waiver.
So that would be item 4. Item 4 would be that the additional parking that they're requesting is acceptable. Period.
based on their,
44 spots, right?
yeah, the 44 spots is, we recommend the approval of the 44 spots. Of
Spaces.
Parking.
And that's number 5. Number 1 is the planner memo. Number 2 is the current natural landscaping maintained for
No, number
screening.
2 was the township engineers. That's what I said. And then number 3 was the landscaping.
Right.
Number 4 was what we're talking about here.
The walkway.
And number
And number 5
5 is,
Number
is
5 is the
the,
parking.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Number
You
5
said
is the
number 4
parking.
is parking.
Thank you.
Okay.
And have we addressed the parking lighting where they put solar lighting in?
Yeah, they demonstrated, that what they're proposing, and it's fine.
Yeah, it's basically a dark sky compliance.
I miss seeing that in the plan.
Well, it was in their presentation, and they'll supply that for the board.
They sent an
It's part of the
email.
detail. Okay, I missed,
Detailed.
Yeah, it came late.
that was
The
late.
email came late this afternoon from
The
the
applicant.
applicant, yeah.
And their-
So it's got that whole
Presentation
presentation.
in it, which
in the
needs to be uploaded into the meeting record.
Actually, he made some, I think he made some modification. He
Send
said,
an updated version.
Yes,
that'd be great.
Spelling
Okay.
things.
Thanks.
and-
yeah, I'll make sure it gets uploaded tomorrow.
All right,
Support.
okay, so motion by Hyde and supported by Walt.
Teamwork.
Any further discussion? Right, a roll call vote, please.
Hyde,
Yes.
Walsh, yes, Hindle,
Yes,
Fletcher,
Yes.
Brandt,
yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Culbertson.
Yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
thank you very much. Moving along, to our childcare ordinance.
So we last talked about this, I think, in October. We did a once through of the proposed ordinance. I apologize that you didn't get this till earlier today. I thought it was attached to my memo, but in my haste getting ready for the holiday, I didn't attach it. But really the only very limited modifications that were made, on the first page under family daycare home, I added at the very end, C increased capacity definition. And also under C group daycare home on the first page, that was, also added C increased capacity definition. That's what we talked about. And then on the last page, in areas where we talked about fencing, we added or natural barrier. And so that was in number 5 on, the first item on the last page. And then I believe, number 5 under D also, that was added.
Because there are two different, just for new commissioners, there's a childcare center and a childcare home, is it?
There's a family home, a group home, and a daycare center.
And they all have,
Yeah, a family home is, I believe, 7 children or less. A group home is, more than 7 children, up to 12 children. And then a daycare, of course, would be more than 12 children. And in my memo, I outlined, we talked about, what districts these are permitted and conditional uses in. I've listed those. Basically, all family daycare is a permitted use in all residential districts. That's required by state law. And then group daycare homes are conditional uses in all of those districts as regulated by state law. And then daycare facilities, we also allow in all of those districts. And then in addition, the office service zoning district as a conditional use. And then you did ask the last time we spoke about a map. And so we did provide a map in the different types of facilities that are located in Scio Township. And there are a number that are near us in Ann Arbor, and I think there's a couple in Dexter too, but these are the ones just in Scio Township.
It was just an FYI because we wanted to know where they were right now. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I was remembering.
15.
So
Yeah, I just have one comment, and that is, about the waiver of the outdoor play area. And I'm wondering if we want to say within 500 feet of the subject parcel, or if it's waived by the state license.
the state license will waive it. And I mean, that language comes directly from the statute, within 500 feet.
Yeah,
And they have to demonstrate to the state whether there's an appropriate play area. Like it'd be near a park or something, right?
right. Okay,
So,
okay, great.
or a school where they're allowed to utilize the.
Gotcha.
What number is that and what page is that on?
That was, it's, yeah.
Page 4.
D.
D4.
It's in
item
There's
4.
D4.
D4, and then it's also in C4.
C4. Because
Okay.
it's
Oh, yeah.
repeated in
It's
both of
repeated,
those
yeah.
for the different facilities. Okay.
Thank you.
And one of the reasons for the update is because of the new the state legislature passed a law to try and make it easier for.
Right, we're in desperate need in our state for additional childcare facilities. So next steps, if you're comfortable with this language, the next step would be, I would vet it through the township attorney and we can then set a public hearing. I can just set the public hearing at a available meeting, you don't have to set the date. So if that's okay, then we can do that. If you have other comments on the language, I can make those modifications.
There's a big question. Do group homes you call it a group home, so do they also relate to group homes of like elderly?
No,
Okay.
this is specifically a group daycare home.
So should we call it group daycare home?
This is in the daycare, these
I
are in
know
the
it's in-
daycare
I know it's in a-
facilities. Yeah,
yeah.
but yes, it does say group daycare home. Standards for
here.
group daycare
Okay.
homes.
I just saw it on
So it's
this
in
map.
the
It just said,
definition.
yeah.
Oh, on the map.
On the map.
The map isn't part of.
Mine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
No, they are totally.
Yep, I know they are, so that's why.
No.
That's why you wanted to say that.
Yeah. Okey-dokey.
So the private home,
Family daycare home.
it says private home, a private residence in which the licensee or registered parent resides. Member of the household, which residency is not contingent upon caring for children or employment. License, so just a private person in their home.
It's meant, yeah, it's so, I think the family daycare home talks about what a private home is. They're just, that's already in our ordinance, what a private home is in relation to a daycare facility. It's saying that it's your home that you live in and that you can have a daycare. It's called a private home and you can be licensed for either a family home daycare where you have up to 7 children, or it can be 7 to 12 children if you get the group. It's just the difference in the licensing through the state and then our approval process.
Gotcha. And the next step is you vet with the attorney.
Vet with the attorney, and then we can set a public hearing at where we would hear any comments. And after we hold our public hearing, we can finalize our ordinance document, and that would go to the board for their consideration and approval and adoption. So
Still multiple steps.
still, everything is multiple steps.
And so, at the public hearing, would we be required to vote approval?
You would be recommending approval or approval with modifications to the board.
And then you'd finalize the doc and then. it goes to the
Then, yeah, so then there's a specific format that it would go in before it goes to the board. But it would be all the same language you see here. It just would be a clean copy. And then, of course, we have to have an ordinance number and there's, so be it resolved and all the attorney language.
So the next time we would have it would be at the public hearing. After it's gone through the attorney.
Yes. Questions?
I've got a lot on our plate. This one looks like it's ready.
Yeah.
Take it forward.
There's more coming. Yeah, there's.
Vet away.
That away.
All right, yeah, I don't think, do we need to vote on that, or I think we
Nope,
should.
you will vote on it when it comes back.
Yeah, okay, so we're good at moving forward, then the public hearing, the vetting.
The vetting, and I'll set the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, the next one, our bylaws.
So it came to our attention, we reviewed these last year. They were adopted in April. And it came to our attention. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just telling you where you can find it.
That we kind of missed a component that we had talked about kind of extensively, actually. It's on page 7, subsection D. And it talks about how, when the planning commission will take formal action. And it's always been as long as I've been doing this, and I've been working with the township for 15 years. And I think it came about because, when you have large projects that require a public hearing, the planning commission didn't always feel comfortable taking action that evening. There may be more discussion that had to happen or more information that had to come back. And so, but there were also small things that didn't warrant that additional time. And so the planning commission has always made it, I've always tell people that the planning commission doesn't have to take action the night of a public hearing. But you can if you're comfortable moving a project forward. And so that's what this language does. It basically just, it outlines our current procedure, how we have been working through projects that require a public hearing. And so, Jan, unless you have something else. Yes.
I'm at a loss to say why we would need to say it this distinctly, that we can't have, we're not gonna take any action unless the public doesn't have any problem with it and we don't have any problem. I would put it a lot simpler that we're not required to take action on it at this meeting if we have any additional concerns that need to be addressed. Otherwise, we can go ahead and approve it. I mean, we can go ahead and take action on it. I don't know that I need to lay out that.
Well,
the
yeah, it's
public
like
can't
that,
have
we'll
any comments.
only take formal action on matters at this meeting if no public objections have been raised and all PC members'
Yes, so
comments, questions have been
It,
said.
it seems very
it
restrictive
does.
and it takes away,
Our
you know,
ability.
our
Yes.
ability
So if the
to
public has
say.
objections and we made a little modification because of that, we could go ahead and do it. But not the way this is worded.
Well, and I think, so this is what I had in my notes that
Yeah.
somehow didn't make it into the
Yeah.
formal draft. And maybe there's a reason why it didn't make it into the formal draft, but what it actually says isn't correct either, right? What the current language says isn't correct either.
Correct.
So,
Right.
so, the way other planning commissions operate, it's not this formal, like you said, Bob. I mean, if it's ready to be moved on or to be acted on, it is. And if it's not, then they postpone or they,
That's how I would rather have it.
so I'm open, you tell me how you would like to.
I think you could say the planning commission may or may not take formal action on these matters at this meeting. Bing,
Period.
period.
Yes.
And, yeah, go ahead.
I think you might have put it in there because I talked about public engagement.
Sure.
that They're aware of these things coming up and they have a chance to state objections.
Yep.
And there are times.
But I like the way you just worded it, just may or may not,
Yep, period.
because it is the way it works sometimes.
Then we
For
have,
me,
Sort of is up to the public to be aware then.
yeah, yes, that's why we posted on the website.
yeah, that's why we
In the
listen.
past, it wasn't always posted in a timely manner,
Yeah.
manner, that's some.
And now, I have to say, people have gotten very, good night.
I know, I'm like, why not in it?
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
So you want to get rid of that whole, so the planning commission may or may not take formal action on these matters at this meeting, period, and get rid of the rest of the
Yes.
paragraph?
Well, I
Yeah.
don't mind having,
Or the applicant may seek a special meeting. I think you still, it recognizes that if
There's
someone's in a
an
hurry,
option.
they have an option to do
Okay.
a special meeting.
Or the applicant may seek a special meeting notice, which should be posted. Make comments, okay?
And do we want to say anything about written or emailed comments are encouraged, just because we want people to make use of the email because it's easier to make a record? That people. read.
I think we just inform them. Does it need to be in our bylaws?
Maybe
No, I'm
that could be
asking.
number E.
Well, I think written just assumes
As
it's either an
an
email or a letter, but in most cases, it's an email anymore.
And even if it's verbal, if they come to the meeting, these are recorded now,
Right.
it's documented.
I'll make that change. Is there any other changes since we're already talking about it?
thank you for putting it in there.
Yeah, we'll bring it back. I'll bring back a clean copy.
So I would like to briefly bring this up to the commission because I've been thinking about it and I've talked to Jan about it. I'm concerned about the chair of a planning commission being a consultant on a project. I know that we have language in our bylaws regarding conflict of interest and Jan invoked those. I just think, say my piece and others can speak to it or think about it. I'm not looking for any action today. I think it sends the wrong tone to the community. Where a chair or even a planning commissioner, let's say I was an engineer and I was consulting on a project, I think when you sign on to do this work, that all appearances of conflict need to be thought about, and in that regard, that planning commissioners, chairs, or otherwise should not be consulting on projects. I just think that that's the wrong tone. And it's the wrong example for our community. So I think that we should put that in our bylaws. I'm not talking about creating language today. I had opportunity to speak to Jan about it. This is no slant on her. I think she did it with admirable intentions and carried it out admirably, but I do believe that it is a conflict. I don't know how you can be on both sides, steering somebody to come before the planning commission to ask them to do something. I don't know how you slice that so thinly, but I just wanted to go on the record, and I think the board of trustees should consider it as well, but I think we should step up. We should be better than our United States Supreme Court, and we should have a policy on it, and we should not do it. I mean, that's what leadership is all about.
Do we have some language that says, you don't have to declare the conflict until a decision or a vote comes?
No,
it doesn't say that.
I don't think,
No, I think it's in there.
It is, it's in under conflict of interest on page 7.
Well, you
section
should-
over there.
And I think having it disclose a conflict, when a pre-application comes in, it would be important. I just want to say, just in, looking at architects and engineers, if you look at planning commissions all over the state, Lisa Sauve is on, and there've been landscape architects on boards, and I think their training and so forth really does help on a board. I wouldn't want a whole board of architects or engineers, but I do think their professional training really helps a board. I think declaring it early is important. I do think that that's important. And I think there are people who I know we've approached who, I mean, at least I'm retired and I got no,
Job.
compensation from this. It was a voluntary kind of thing because of my long-term standing, but you will not get some, if you want that expertise on your planning commission, you're excluding it then because
Yeah.
no one will ever serve.
and rightfully so.
Yeah, and
Because the loyalty should be to this full commission as well as the community. And I think it divides it a little bit, if not a lot. And I will say this, we don't have that problem. We have 2 engineers and an architect. And I don't think our planning commission should be stacked with professionals. It should be people from
it
the
should be a good
community as
mix.
well.
It should be a good
Yeah,
mix.
I mean, we got a good mix.
There hasn't been, I feel, a whole lot of transparency with some of the things that have gone on in Scio Township. And I think to what Commissioner Moore said, people need to, if there's a conflict, there's a conflict. That happens, but disclose it up front.
And I
don't
did
hide it.
disclose it at pre-app
Yeah.
meetings. I'm
did.
sure she did, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But I think
but
putting
I'm
it in
going
bylaws
above
is
that.
good.
I'm saying it should not happen.
You're saying you shouldn't accept the side job.
No, it should not happen. The chair or a member of this commission should not be consulting projects that come before this commission.
I agree
I
with
think that that's a
you.
conflict.
Not with any regularity anyway, right?
Regularity or not, it's not based on regularity. It's at the very least, the appearance of impropriety. And secondarily, I do think there's.
Okay, but is it the person or the firm? Because a lot of these engineering firms have 100 people. Now, someone else could represent it, somebody else could be you know, in their firm
Sure.
representing it.
Sure.
Just like.
I would say I'm not gonna control the firm,
Uh-huh.
but I would say that if you're on the planning commission, you do not consult on that project. You are walled off from that project as well. Yeah,
Okay, I can see
but
that.
I wouldn't try to stop the firm from.
That does happen with the work that I do, and people will say, I work in this XYZ firm, there's 100 of us. I will never have anything to do with this particular thing that we're here for now. It's just not what I do.
Mhm.
There's no conflict.
And
of
lawyers
interest.
have to do that.
Exactly, lawyers have to do that.
Yeah, although you'd have to declare the conflict because you work for that. firm.
Correct,
Yeah.
except that I'm never gonna have my fingers in that pie. Even, and if you don't want me to be voting on things, I won't vote on things, is basically how it's resolved. But it's disclosing it so that
It's more than disclosure, it's more than not voting.
But we don't have a township planner per se, like, sorry. But I mean, in the sense that, somebody on board here that's really doing our planning and getting actively out there trying to get businesses in here, et cetera, et cetera. So, Jan's in a volunteer, I'm just pointing out since you brought up this particular situation. Jan's in a volunteer position here. She does have this expertise, so it sort of, it makes sense on why there would be discussions, even though she does and did say, hey, there's a conflict here. So I don't know, because we're so small, I sort of have I agree with some principles of what you're saying, but I also have some hesitations because, we rely on people like Jan with her expertise.
Absolutely,
And we
absolutely.
rely on, others because we don't have an actual planner in here constantly working on our township.
Well, we do. We have a planner
We
that has
do.
office
Yeah.
hours. And we're not
Yes.
small anymore. We used to be a
Right.
little fry
But I
and we
mean,
did, let
I'm
me just
saying
finish this.
somebody that's actually an employee, planner, like City of Ann Arbor planner.
Well, she has office hours 2 days a week here.
Yeah.
But I will say this, we were a small.
Yeah, she's a planner, I know, but I just
She's the
mean,
township planner.
I know, but
But
it's,
I don't do a lot of the things that you're talking about.
Right.
I'm not
You're not
actively
doing
seeking,
development-
I'm not
development
actively
plan.
seeking, or retaining or, doing development, economic development, I'm not doing that.
Right.
There are
No.
things I'm not doing as the township.
to start with.
But you see. I believe, now, I've only been involved here, I'm in my 4th year, I think, or 5th year. This would be my 5th year as a planning commissioner. And I've heard a lot of complaints about Scio governance. And I think we used to be a small country bumpkin township, and we've grown. And we're not a small bumpkin country town. The Scio Township is no longer that. And because we operated like that for so long, I believe, it's just my opinion, it got us into some trouble because John or Sue, they made the decisions with nobody accountable to no one. Not necessarily putting any money in their pockets, not necessarily prudent decisions. And so we operated that way for a long time. Well, we're beyond that now.
Right.
We need accountability. We have millions of dollars of assets, et cetera, et cetera. And I do believe that in my meager experience thus far, we are part of the leadership of this community, and we have to walk that way. Now, we don't have a problem with development. People want to come to Scio Township. It's 97% occupancy. That's one developer. You know why I don't want to come here? It's 97% occupancy. If we had that, maybe that would be something that I would consider, but that's not our problem. So I think it's setting the right tone of leadership is important, not just getting through day to day. And we've had that problem with leadership. And however, whatever your stories are, whatever, that seems to be a constant issue. And so when this came up, I was just floored, and I just feel that it's important to address. So I won't say anymore. I'll leave it.
This is just the questions.
No, go ahead.
How do we draw the line? Because this is a specific development, but say one of us has a passion about solar and we're working with the solar companies and now we're talking about the ordinances. It's not a business, but it's an ordinance. Do we have to then go, hey, I'm just passionate about solar and I've been talking to all. My problem is I don't know where to draw the line to say, if someone's passionate about something in the community and wants to help develop it,
Right.
where do you, other than talking in this group and saying, hey, sorry, guys, I've been talking with 3 solar companies about how we expand solar in Michigan. I can't be part of the discussion on ordinance.
Right, well, I think we're making a distinction between ordinance language and deliberation and decisions on projects that come. Yeah, but let me answer that question, because I've had that happen to me. People have called me. And I was uncomfortable. And I said, first of all, I didn't know the answer to their question. But then what I said was, you should contact Laura Krebs. And that individual had her number, knew of her, and, so because I've had to walk that line myself. I mean, we're not even supposed to be talking about projects, let alone consulting. We're not allowed to talk to people off to the side about projects, let alone consulting.
I'm struggling with where to draw the line. Other than we have an obligation to this group of people and to the public who's listening to say, if something comes up that you're even remotely involved in, to bring it up so that we're upfront and transparent about it and just say, this is what I'm doing. If you have a problem, I will step back. I don't care if it's ordinance, if it's a development or whatever. I have a passion about this. I'm doing something. I'm willing to step away and go sit someplace else for the duration of the
Well,
discussion.
that's how this is written. But what Jim is saying is, Commissioner Moore is saying is, you shouldn't be involved in that other thing.
If you're going
That's what you say. If you're on this commission, you shouldn't be assisting somebody to present to this commission. Whether that's appropriate or not, I'm not saying. That's what Commissioner Moore is saying.
And I think some of the issues too is, I mean, I was involved in looking for property and stuff for them before I was even on the planning commission. I mean, it's been that long that they've been looking for sites and dreaming about the property. But, I agree that, if I'm in a firm, I do not, if let's say I was still in A3C and that was my firm presenting, because they were the architect of record, or if I was in the engineering firm, it's what you do. You say, I can't be involved in that because I'm on the board.
Yeah.
Right, they'll find someone else who can do it, and
Which is a good, that speaks to my point.
no, it's also knowing that you have the safety here to be able to say, I was involved in that, nobody's gonna go then get out and never come back. Cause I don't think any of us are gonna do that. It's being able
No,
to do
it's,
something.
and we didn't do
should
that. We just went
adapt-
through that. We didn't do that.
That it should be at the pre-app. I think it should be at the pre-app. I
What
think
should
that
be
would
at the
a good-
pre-app?
That a disclosure at the pre-app. As soon as it comes in, that it should be disclosed.
That's something different. We already got disclosure. We already have that right in here.
Yeah,
We
but
got
not at-
disclosure, you leave the room, you don't vote. I'm saying that's not enough. But I'm the only, No, I agree 100% with what you're saying. Are you suggesting that we take time to add additional language? Because I would like to see language about ex parte conversations as recommended by MSU Extension, that should be in your bylaws. I just read an article about that. So is this? Well, it's about 9:37. So, and I just wanted to throw it out there. I'm not looking for action today, but I'd be happy to explore with the rest of the commissioners and follow up.
Great.
And if we have some recommendations on the ex parte, I think that'd be good to bring in too.
I'll also bring it up to Mariah when I talk to her.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
And I'm hoping to do an ethics conflict of interest policy at the Board of Trustees.
Good.
I made that part of my commitment.
Good. It might be good to make
I
it
think it should be part of,
consistent.
like all the boards, and at least the
Absolutely.
ZBA and the
Yeah.
planning commission, those.
So maybe we said. Now I thought. Give them some language.
Yeah, or even have a, educational session on it, so
Mhm.
everybody can
Yeah.
hear that.
Well, definitely we need an educational, presentation in order to understand what our positions should be when somebody approaches us.
Because that makes it easier for people. Do you have a position on that? I do have a position that, I'm choosing not to speak to developers in private conversations. I want to limit it to an open public meeting so that I'm not misunderstood. So I draw the line.
Yep. I agree with that. If you've already had the conversation though, before you're on.
Then you have to ex parte.
Yeah.
What did you guys talk about? When was it?
No, I mean, if you've had that conversation in the past, then you become a commissioner or a trustee. That's sort of the other way around, but still, you should disclose to the commission or, that you discussed this with others that are now before the commission. As soon as it is apparent that it's going to be before us. So don't have the conversation if you're already on the commission, but if you've had it in the past and now it's come before us. Yeah, both ways.
Thank you for bringing this up.
Sure. Appreciate it, because I think it's, and I'll tell you, I'm, talking with, other architects and engineers and so forth, there's, because even when it's in your firm, stepping aside is, if people are trying to, yeah.
In the ex parte, you don't want to have that with the public either.
Right.
So you shouldn't be doing that. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be discussing with the neighborhood what their issues are if the representative from the petitioner or the developer, whoever, isn't present. Yeah, or, and then the rest of the public too. So you're having it in a private conversation with one side or the other.
Usually it comes up when I go to a site and a neighbor, like particularly like a private road, they'll come out, they want to talk to me about, from that East Delhi
Yeah.
project, they wanted to talk to
Exactly.
me
I had
about
to
what
go
your
disclose that I
position.
had a discussion with
Yeah.
Yeah.
public.
Elections.
Elections, yes.
Moving on.
Moving on, so we're going to bring back the MSU extension ex parte and also look at roles and also looking at disclosing earlier as soon as it becomes a application.
And bring back what Mariah might have. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Election of officer. So, we have, chair, vice chair and secretary. And, I do want to say that I have contacted the people in the existing positions and they're willing to continue. Also, obviously, if there's some interest in other folks,
Speak up.
yeah.
I moved the nominations of Bob Walsh, secretary, Jan Coverson as chair, and Bob Hyde as vice chair.
Second.
That's not to say if you guys are interested in jumping in. I think I'm restricted.
Yeah.
You are,
yeah. Hey, I don't have to do
Hey, we appreciate what you do, so. All right, so any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Well, that was I moved your nomination.
Oh, and we had a
We have
second.
to have a second.
Candace supported it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not familiar with the term supported. It's second for the work. I do.
Second,
Yeah.
and that's,
That works.
Difference
works.
in words, but
No, it's just the same meeting. You can always use second.
all right, so I think we're clear. We voted, no opposed. Okay, thank you, for your confidence. I think we have a lot to do.
You sure do.
Going. Okay,
And I would just say that I have learned a lot from working with Jan. And I have the utmost respect for her. even when we disagree. And, the township benefits, there's a lot of things Jan does for us. And a lot of volunteers, and if we went for our volunteer corps, the township would
We
be.
have a great group of volunteers, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who serves on a commission, it is, even though there's a payment associated with it, it's much more of a, the effort involved is much more of a volunteer effort. So everyone here, and I have to say, everyone pulls their weight, and I appreciate this. I think that I've always felt very comfortable with this board because there are disagreements.
You slug it out
But
respectfully.
we respect each other's opinion and where we're coming from, and that's what's good about a board that can do that. So thank you for joining and being a part of it. Okay. Then assignment of committee liaisons. And I actually did have a very good conversation with supervisor, our supervisor, and there isn't anything in policies that say there is a member of the planning commission except for PPP, I believe,
ZBA.
and ZBA.
Yeah.
So even though we have a list of
Board of Trustees.
and board of trustees, the liaison, yeah. So even though we have a list of folks, I'm gonna pull up that list
A list of.
different
Second.
committees and commissions that we, okay, not always is it a voting person that is actually a member of the committee or the commission that's voting. So so part of this is, as we go through this, but we feel that the communication is important. So the question is, the ones that have been, we've had liaisons with, or at least people attending, do we want to continue that? Because we feel that that's important, even though you're not a voting member, which would mean
Which ones are those?
those are,
ZBA, that a voting member?
ZBA is a designee, DDA is not.
That's what I wondered.
Although the appointments have not been made for DDA, so and all of those terms are coming up. I think all of them or most of them.
I think two or three are not, but
Okay.
yes.
But there's a
vast
good group.
majority.
Yeah, so we can make a pitch to have someone in planning who's interested. Otherwise, you can attend at the meetings and just report back and also communicate, because all of those committees also have public comment. So you can, as a person, I'm here from the planning commission, I want to make sure you're aware, these are the things that we're doing, and I want to be intentional about reporting back to the planning commission what's happening here. So the intent is to have a good two-way communication with these boards and commissions, because oftentimes, things are happening that affect planning.
So are you saying that we would be a member of the DDA, a non-voting member of the DDA?
Wouldn't be a member, you'd be attending.
Attending
Oh,
and
just
reporting.
attending, I see.
And
that would-
communicating, yeah.
And that would be the same thing with the LPC.
So any closed session, you wouldn't be able to go into, but you would be, yeah. I don't know what's a
You
good
can't
term
report on
for
that
them.
anyway.
Yeah, right. That's true. You can say, you haven't done a closed session. So I guess one is, do we want to, are any of those ones we don't want to continue? And if there are people that are interested in attending those. Currently, Bob is on the ZBA, so that's. And-
Walsh? Yes.
Yep, and your term, you have another year or something?
It lines with this
Okay.
November of this year.
Okay.
This is the ZBA, you said?
Yes.
Mhm, yep, and, okay. And
they hold, the DDA, they hold their meetings
at noon,
by Zoom.
yes, so I think everyone
Yeah.
except ESTF, ESTF even does it by Zoom, so everybody at least has a Zoom, so that's also an advantage because.
If you're just attending without being a voting member.
Remember, you don't have to be there, in person.
Well, I would like to continue the Western Washtenaw Regional Advisory Group, not committee,
Group, I have to, yeah.
if nobody else is interested.
I'd like you to.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on with that group.
Yeah.
All the other townships, and Dexter City, Chelsea City, get together and talk about transportation and housing.
Okay, great. And then are you still good with Hand River Watershed Council?
Yep, I would take anybody else that had an interest in listening to them instead of listening to me, but I would like to continue that.
Okay. And I'm glad to continue with the ESTF.
Please.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and
We're not learned enough to take that on.
so there's Parks, Pathways and Preserves, LPC, Road Advisory Committee, and the DDA.
So I might get in trouble at home, but I wouldn't mind going to some of the DDA meetings if there's something up that you wanted me to look at and.
Yeah, now, one of the things is whether we think we want to have a voting member on DDA.
Is that possible?
Well, it depends on the appointments.
Right, you can apply to be on the DDA. There's openings right now.
Yeah. So do complete that form.
I'm gonna have to.
So think about that if you need to negotiate.
That is an important one for the planning commission.
I think
DDA is very
I don't
important.
know
That's why I'm.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
bringing it
going to
up.
some meetings of the DDA, but I don't know if I can commit at this time to,
I'll-
full time.
I
Sure.
cannot.
Okay.
I'll think
I still
about
have to work for. a
filling
living,
out the form.
unfortunately. I'm not
Can you send me
retired,
the
so
form?
I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I've got surgery
If
coming
there's
up
a-
and I've got horses and ducks. and
You,
goats
you,
and-
you've got a
yeah.
plate full.
Yeah.
On the webpage? Okay, all right. I might do that. Okay.
Okay, and I'd be glad to cover either LPC or PPP. If, I don't know, I think one
I would
needs
take
it
the
for,
other.
or
But you
of
guys,
Laura. And if
Well,
you
you're
would
not the
have,
one
if
for
you're
that.
I
still,
can try to some occasional,
Laura,
but.
Kindle.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you-
Laura said, I got
No.
locked into this commission.
I just, no, I actually have taken on some other things, so I really, to
We don't wanna
add,
hear that, Laura.
to
We're
add
all
this,
taking
I
on
know,
things.
to add this, no, it's, and then you don't wanna see me on PPP.
Rob, you need to twist some arms.
But
Or wait, Jonathan.
like I said, happy to do some DDA and go and listen and talk and whatever and, when I can.
okay, well, what, do you wanna do you have a
When do they meet?
preference?
When does the LPC, when is the PPP? I could look
I
it up
think
It's
PP
once every 2 months, first of all.
for
for
which?
LPC.
For
I'm
LPC.
sorry, for DDA.
Oh,
Oh, that's
It's every
DDA.
when?
Once every 2 months.
two.
And it's a noon meeting and.
One was today.
Yes, every 2 months. Okay, I like that
Yeah.
frequency.
Well, you volunteer for.
In for that. And
That's
that's
not-
why
I knew
that
that
was
was
So
a-
you're gonna do it part-time and
that
I'm
was the
gonna do
hook.
it part-time?
No, I'm gonna fill out the form to be a.
You're gonna do
a
it,
voting
oh, you're
member.
gonna be on DDA.
So you can come and.
I'll come.
Yeah, you can give her support.
LPC is the second Thursday of every month at 4 PM.
And the DDA is at noon? Yes. And PPP then is the second Wednesday of every month. It's in the same week.
Yep.
At 4.
At 4.
I don't know how I know this. And what day does the DDA meet? Sorry?
Well, I would
Mondays.
prefer
Mondays?
Your choice.
Yeah, that's what,
The LPC.
On Monday.
so today was,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I don't know if it's the first or the second. I don't know.
So it's the second Monday.
Oh,
And I
okay.
don't know that I should do that
Second Monday of the
after
month.
volunteering to the
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
then I'll follow the LPC and
Every
you,
2
and
months.
Bob will follow the PPP.
Probably just
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, Bob Hyde.
one of those rare
It
things
used
where there are two Bobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a few Bobs around.
Yeah.
but
It's not as common.
Okay,
Monday.
all right.
Yes.
I think then
Every-
we've got that,
Every two.
that covered.
months.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay,
And it's at
Now, is this must be a volunteer, I mean, just an attendee? There's no.
There aren't
chance that
any
the
openings
LPC
right now.
PPP, okay. No openings.
No openings for what? There's pending ones, I think, on PPP, but September or December.
Okay, well, so we should be,
so we should put in our name for them,
yeah,
even though there aren't openings, so
Right.
we're on the record as
go on
wanting it.
record as
Okay,
wanting to be a voting member.
yeah,
From, as a representative of the
Uh-huh.
planning commission.
okay, great. Thank you. All right, then,
Yeah.
pre-app rotation, what I'd like to, pre-application, what we typically do is just go through and assign months. And what I'm proposing to make it fair and also, so there isn't like, what do we do in the next year is, just go through and then I think and we do it by, the folks with the most experience first and then the newer commission members, so you have a chance to kind of get.
What do you do?
You attend a pre-app meeting, they're scheduled typically in person. Either it's in the afternoons of Tuesdays or Thursdays.
Here at the township.
At the township
Conference
hall.
room with the
And
developer.
It's an opportunity for people to come in, and sometimes there are concept meetings too, and.
Yeah, but typically, so
There-
typically
yeah,
it's,
go
it's
ahead.
an application that you're going to hear at this body. But before they submit a formal application, we meet, we talk about some of the issues. The engineers typically there, myself, the fire department, utilities director. We talk about, it could be a large project, it could be a brand new residential development, for example. It could be in a commercial building addition. It just varies depending on the applicant.
So they can last for an undetermined amount
They're
of time?
typically an hour.
Okay, all right.
Typically an
At
hour.
most.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
I would suggest that we have some sort of a guide that we write out that says what
Oh.
we should be doing at that, what
And
is
there
the
multiple in one
responsibility?
day?
There sometimes is,
Okay.
but typically there could be up to 3 in one day, but usually there's only ever 1 or 2.
yeah, and typically it's and you can talk from, I can't, I can't speak for the entire planning commission, but based on discussions that we've had before and my concerns, A, B, and C. So it's reflecting on what you've heard from other planning commission members about concerns and so forth. And also, if we see something that you think is.
Right, maybe a problem, or
Problem.
something even you like. I'm gonna get in the details. I'm gonna worry about the ordinance requirements and them meeting all that. But let's say, for example, we'll talk about, well, are you doing any solar, or, are you gonna do, any EV charging stations? How are you connecting to the public sidewalk? Those are the types of things that maybe broader things that have been brought up at planning commission, that if I don't get to them, I usually, I let everybody go around the table, and at the very end, I'll say, and the planning commissioner, did you have anything to add?
Okay.
And so, it gives you a chance to listen to everybody else and look at the plan, and you can say, no, I think I've heard everything. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, so.
Laura's pretty good
Would
about
you
covering.
consider some affordable housing units as part of your residential?
Yeah.
program?
Or how is this development helping us meet our carbon neutrality goals? Something like that, open into one. So anyway, what, I was just doing, we had, already established Walsh, Moore, and Hyde for March. So the question,
March, you mean?
Through March.
through March.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so I was gonna do, April Culbertson, Brandt, June would be Hindle, July would be Fletcher. August, Walsh, September would be Moore, and we'll publish this, so it's a list. October Hyde, November Culbertson, December Brandt, and then do January of 26 and February of 26, because Hindle and Fletcher will still be here, and that would kind of tie and everybody, then it's, an equal
And,
opportunity.
these are just as people request them, we could have 3 in a month and then not have any for 2 months. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason.
But
These are
the
based
time-
on,
The time of day though, you might not be able to come to the.
Right,
time.
I need notice because you're right, my work occurs during the day.
And what and we should probably.
They're usually
put this
around
out.
1:30, 2:00.
Yeah,
And how far in advance do you know, or you just are expected to be here?
it can vary.
it can vary.
The
But
township
if
will send you an
can't-
email knowing you on the list for May, let's say.
Mhm. But if you can't make it, you can say, okay, you can go email Bob and say, Bob, can you take this one for
Okay.
me?
Yep.
And then they'll
Alright.
schedule it with Bob
Okay.
or.
You can
Talk
also
that
ask
right.
Bob.
Or, just tell the office.
Okay.
And let, Jan and Fran and I
Work it
just,
out,
yeah,
okay.
work it out.
Got it.
Another one. Yeah, I can't, you can always say I can't make
But,
it.
but do you know it sometimes 24 hours in advance or not necessarily?
Oh, it's more than that.
Oh,
More than
yeah.
If I have at least 24 hours notice, I can tell them I'm not available.
Or you can say that day doesn't work. How about another day? Because usually they will check with the developer first, so they'll have a date they're
All
gonna
right,
do.
so there's flexibility then. All right, good, thank you.
I've always
And you
accommodated.
can always say no.
Yeah.
You can say no. Cause things come up. Okay. Yeah. So, and I don't know, Kathleen, if you feel comfortable based on your load and so forth, that you want to do the pre-app meetings, cause.
All of them?
No, just.
Yeah. It's a good thing you were saying.
Nice job, Jan.
If you wanna, I put you in the
Jump in.
rotation.
No, that's good.
That's good with you. Okay, great.
Great, Jan, you wanna know, you guys get paid to come to these?
Yeah.
You get your per diem
Wow.
to come to these.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So that, I
You get
guess
money
that's
for
the other
that?
All
reason
that
why
pay
I
we
tried.
get.
Mhm.
Well,
It's stipend.
yes,
Bob, it's a stipend,
whatever.
a meeting stipend.
You should be like the Congress. Are we due for a raise? They had a raise in the last CR language. That didn't pass with that either.
Yeah, and
It's 10 o'clock, let's.
Yep.
All right.
any specific reports from either OHM or Laura?
I will be very brief. The next meeting, we're planning to talk about the Jackson Road Overlay District, having the discussion from the Jackson Road Overlay Group, and their findings, so that you'll start to talk about that. And we're gonna also talk about solar accessory structures specifically, even though the other part of our ordinance is likely on hold for an undetermined amount of time. Doug will be attending that meeting. I have, a commitment that I, can't get out of, so, but he will be here probably via Zoom, and, you'll have all the information in advance of that meeting. Secondly, I met with Kathleen and Kanda and Laura last week, kind of just to give a little new planning commissioner orientation, and we talked about education opportunities. I know some of you have already been through the MSU Extension Citizen Planner. If you haven't, or if you would like to do it again, I encourage you, I guess you don't have to do it again, but I'd encourage you to look at other maybe education opportunities that you might be interested in. The MSU Extension has for an in-person program in Howell that is, I think, every Thursday through March 6th, from March 6th through April 17th. That's from 6 to 9. Or you can also do it online. I know they put out a separate module about every month, and then there's a little test associated with it. So you can do that on your own time.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested.
The township
in
will
this-
pay for it.
The township will pay for it, yeah.
This is the education material, and if you want to look at a course book for the citizen planner course, it's in here.
And the how pieces for
welcome
the
to-
citizen.
The
planner.
Howl is the in-person version.
Yeah,
Yep, or you can do it online.
and it's about a half an hour and a how.
Yeah.
That's 30 minutes.
And it's after the winter, so
So
hopefully.
they're not doing it here next door.
No,
How
they-
convenient for us.
I know, it's next door,
It's an excellent program, though.
Additionally, the Michigan Association of Planners also has a bunch of different training workshops for electeds and planning commissions and ZBAs, and they have a planning and zoning essentials that is both in person at the Bavarian Inn Lodge in Frankenmuth on March 18th, or over a couple nights on Zoom. So I have this is mine. I don't need to go to these, but if you want mine, and Jan has some, we can make copies, and the township will also pay for your education for these. We're adding, we have planning, education, in our budget for this year. We're gonna have education in our budget for next year, so. there were plenty of opportunity for everybody to get some.
Yeah.
Um,
And one other thing, if people are interested in specific ones, I think it's nice. I think the citizen planner is fundamental. It's a really good one for new planning commission members to do, and the online is okay. Obviously, in person, there's more dialogue. But if you see something that you'd like to do, I think it's great for people to do different ones and then share what you learned. One of the ones that I was wondering if the trustees would be interested in is, I noticed Wendy Ramson is doing how to get the type of development you want. But it's not close to us, but I think we could ask her what she would charge to do it here, because she's local. And I think that would be something that maybe trustees would benefit from, some other folks, you know, it might be a one that would be of interest. I
I
don't,
think it would be useful.
yeah,
absolutely.
To us too.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
no,
So
to
you're
us,
talking about one course. Planning commission plus
Mhm.
board of trustees.
yeah, and it could be an open meeting, so public who would be interested in how to get the developments that you want could participate too. So,
I remember Riser saying, how do we get the cafes?
yeah,
Coming up Jackson Road.
okay, so I can contact Wendy and see if she'd be willing to do it. And how much it would be. Cause that would be, I was also, I really want, the site plan review, if people have been looking at drawings and don't have, you know, kind of look like that's,
I
you
wanna
know,
see the engineering drawing.
really foreign to me. They are at Washington Community College. One of them is looking at site plan review. So I would recommend that if it's really hard for you to look at drawings and interpret them. And then the other one that I was thinking, I have to check my schedule, but I was really interested in the community engagement one, just to, because we're gonna have to, and next year we have to at least look at our master plan and determine if we want to go through a process again. Also, we're doing that the complete streets, which includes some community engagement. And I just think Scio could benefit from more advanced community engagement techniques and learning about them. So anyway, that was kind of what I was.
What's that called, streets?
Complete streets. And that's the short term, it's so much longer. Okay, so maybe our next meeting is the 28th. And I think that'd be great if people came and said, this is what, you know, I'm really interested in. And obviously, either Christy or Fran can enroll us, because oftentimes the payment is a part of the registration, and so they need to do it.
Can I see that?
Oh, absolutely. And I will
Sorry.
send out my little sheet that has a link, because all of those are online too. So if you want to read a little bit more about them, you can. All right, great.
I am having surgery 2 weeks from tomorrow. I won't be at the next meeting.
Mhm.
And I might be back for the first February one. I don't know, because my mobility is going to be quite limited for a while.
Well, I hope it goes well.
Yeah.
I'll be back, but you might not see me for a little while. It's gonna depend on how fast I heal and stuff like that.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Do that therapy.
Oh, yeah. This isn't the first time at the rodeo, unfortunately, so. I broke my foot earlier this year and it started a cascading event of problems from previous surgeries, so.
Okay.
You can view, we're on.
Yeah, I can watch on Zoom, but I can't vote is what I was told.
Right. And you're limited to public comment. Okay, any other items? Okay, then we'll go
Something that
to,
needs to be talked about at 10 PM.
yeah, public comment. We're opening it at 10:08,
There's no one in the room.
and there's no one in the room, yeah, online.
Tracy?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, my name's Tracy Bradish and I live at 2249 Morrison Road. I just want to say thanks for the robust conversation about social vines. And I just want to chime in with the concerns that my neighbors brought up earlier regarding noise and particularly traffic. living on Morrison Drive, I was witness to the 4th of July parking debacle, I guess I'll call it. It was quite unexpected, and hopefully it won't be repeated. I appreciate Brian and Lori's attempts to change up things next year. And I just want to make sure that I go on the record saying that all of the concerns that were brought up by my neighbors are concerns that my husband and I share. And thank you for responding to them and taking them seriously. That's it.
Thank you. And thank you for, staying on.
Rob Pattinson.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, gang. Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. First of all, Commissioner Moore, thank you very much for the discussion you brought up. You gave us all a lot to think about. I think that was very valuable and appreciated. And to Commissioner Fletcher and Commissioner Hindle, welcome to the Planning Commission. For your first Planning Commission meeting to have the Heron Farms with its 6-year, very complicated history was a tough one, but well done. And Kanda, Mom says to say, give my love to your mom and
I'll
hello
do
to
that.
the Pattinsons.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you.
No one else.
Anyone else? All right.
Move to close public comment.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Right, public comment is closed at 10:10. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported by the Bobs.
Short
Any
hand.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 10 time.